The wagon hit another rut, and Lena Whitaker's spine compressed against the wooden bench hard enough to make her teeth click. She didn't complain. She'd learned years ago that complaining changed nothing except how people looked at you afterward. "Almost there," the driver said for the third time in an hour. He was a lean man named Pruitt, who'd met her at the train station in Bozeman with the enthusiasm of someone collecting a package he hadn't ordered. His eyes kept sliding toward her carpet bag, like he was trying to calculate its worth. Lena pulled her shawl tighter. March in Montana felt like January anywhere else. The landscape rolled out in shades of brown and gray, dormant grass, bare trees, sky the color of old dishwater. Mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks still capped with snow that wouldn't melt until May if they were lucky. "Mr. Mercer know you're coming today?" Pruitt asked. "He should." Lena touched the letter in her pocket, though she'd memorized every word weeks ago. The paper was soft now from repeated folding. "I sent word from Omaha." Pruitt made a noise that might have been a laugh or a cough. "Cole Mercer ain't much for reading mail. He reads enough to place advertisements. That was near 6 months back. Figured he'd given up on that notion." Lena's jaw tightened. 6 months. The advertisement had listed specific requirements. Woman of good character, capable of ranch work, willing to relocate to Montana Territory. Marriage by proxy acceptable. She'd been in Omaha then, working in a boarding house where the owner's son had started watching her in ways that made her skin crawl. When she'd found Mercer's listing in the newspaper, it had felt like providence. Now it felt like stupidity. "What's he like?" she asked. "Mr. Mercer." Pruitt's hand shifted on the reins. The horses, two sway-backed geldings that had seen better years, plodded forward without much guidance. "Hard to say. Keeps to himself mostly. Does his trading in town maybe once a month. Pays his debts. Don't start trouble." He paused. "Don't end it neither, when it finds him." "Is he cruel?" "Didn't say that. Said he don't start trouble. There's a difference." Lena watched the landscape crawl past. They'd been traveling for nearly 2 hours since leaving town, following a road that had degraded into 2 wagon ruts separated by dead grass. She'd seen exactly 3 structures: a burned-out homestead with only the chimney still standing, a line shack that looked abandoned, and a small cabin with smoke coming from the chimney and chickens scratching in the yard. "Not many neighbors out this way," she observed. "Land's cheap because nothing much grows. Too high, too cold, too rocky. The folks who settle here either got no other choice or they're running from something." Pruitt glanced at her. "Which are you?" "Does it matter?" "I suppose not, but Cole Mercer's the running type. So if you're looking for a man who's going to share his feelings and hold your hand through the hard times, you picked wrong." Lena almost laughed. She'd stopped expecting hand-holding when she was 12 years old, and her father died, leaving her mother to raise 4 children on a seamstress's wages. She'd stopped expecting feelings when her mother remarried a man who viewed children as unpaid labor. She'd stopped expecting anything at all when she turned 18 and realized that the only person who would save her was herself. "I'm looking for work and a roof," she said. "That's all?" "Well, he's got both those things. Whether he'll share them's another question." The wagon crested a small rise, and Pruitt pulled back on the reins. "There!" Lena followed his gesture. Below them, nestled in a shallow valley where a creek cut through the brown grass, sat a collection of buildings that time seemed to have forgotten. The main house was 2 stories, timber construction with a covered porch that wrapped around the front. The roof was intact, but the paint was gone, weathered down to gray wood. A barn stood to the left, bigger than the house, with a corral attached. Several smaller outbuildings dotted the property. A smokehouse, a chicken coop, what might have been a bunkhouse. Everything looked functional, but worn, like furniture in a waiting room nobody used anymore. "He built most of this himself," Pruitt said. "Him and his wife, before." "Before what?" Pruitt clicked his tongue at the horses, and the wagon started down the slope. "Before she died." The words settled over Lena like a blanket made of lead. A widow. The advertisement hadn't mentioned that. But then again, she hadn't mentioned her own situation either, had she? Everyone carried their ghosts. Some just wore them more heavily than others. As they approached the house, Lena noticed details. A broken shutter hanging at an angle. Garden beds choked with dead weeds. A clothesline with no clothes. The porch steps looked solid, but the railing had gaps where spindles had rotted away. The whole place had an air of something paused mid-sentence, waiting for someone to finish the thought. A dog appeared from behind the barn, a rangy gray animal with suspicious eyes and prominent ribs. It didn't bark, just watched them approach with the stillness of something deciding whether to fight or run. Pruitt brought the wagon to a stop in front of the house. The dog maintained its distance, hackles raised slightly. "Cole," Pruitt called out. "Got a visitor." Silence. The wind rattled through dead leaves caught in the porch corners. Somewhere a shutter creaked. The dog sat down but kept watching. "He's probably out checking fences," Pruitt said, though he didn't sound convinced. "Or in the barn." Lena climbed down from the wagon before she could talk herself out of it. Her legs were stiff from the ride, her back ached, and she needed to relieve herself badly enough that her teeth were floating. None of that mattered. What mattered was that she'd come 500 miles to be here, and she wasn't getting back on that wagon. "Thank you for the ride," she said, reaching for her carpet bag. "Hold on now. Maybe we should wait until—" "I'll be fine." Pruitt looked like he wanted to argue, but didn't have the energy. He handed down her bag, then a small trunk that contained everything she owned, 2 spare dresses, undergarments, her mother's silver hairbrush, a Bible she never read but couldn't throw away, and a packet of letters tied with string. "You sure about this?" he asked. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." He nodded slowly, like that made sense to him. "Good luck, Miss Whitaker. You're going to need it." The wagon pulled away, and Lena stood alone in the yard with her possessions at her feet and a strange dog watching her like she was a puzzle it hadn't figured out yet. The house stared back at her with dark windows that reflected nothing. She picked up her carpet bag and started toward the porch. The dog stood up, tense. "Easy," Lena said quietly. "I'm not here for you." The dog didn't move as she climbed the steps. The boards were solid under her feet. That was something. She raised her hand to knock, then hesitated. Through the door's small window, she could see into a dim interior. A front room with furniture covered in dust. A cold fireplace. Everything still and lifeless as a photograph. She knocked. 3 firm raps that echoed louder than she'd expected. Nothing. She waited, counting to 30, then knocked again. Still nothing. The wind picked up and she smelled snow coming, that particular metallic scent that meant weather was moving in. Her wool coat was back in Omaha because she'd sold it to pay for the train ticket. "Mr. Mercer?" she called out. "My name is Lena Whitaker. I'm responding to your advertisement in the Omaha Herald. I sent a letter notifying you of my arrival." The silence felt deliberate now, like someone was inside, listening, choosing not to answer. Lena's chest tightened. She'd been rejected before, plenty of times, but usually people had the decency to do it to your face. She tried the door handle. Locked. Fine. She picked up her bags and walked around the side of the house, the dog trailing behind her at a distance. There had to be a back entrance. Every house had a back entrance. The rear of the property opened onto a view of the creek, and beyond it, a series of corrals and pastures where a few cattle grazed. The barn stood closer now, its door half open. Smoke rose from a small chimney. Someone had a fire going inside. Lena set her bags down and walked toward the barn. The dog followed, more interested now than hostile. "Mr. Mercer?" she called as she approached. "I'm here about the advertisement. I've come from Omaha." She stepped into the barn's shadow, and a voice stopped her cold. "I know who you are, and I don't remember sending for you." The man stood in the doorway of what looked like a tack room, his frame backlit by the fire inside. He was tall, over 6 feet, with shoulders that had been built through work, not vanity, dark hair that needed cutting, several days of beard growth, eyes she couldn't make out in the shadows but could feel weighing her, finding her lacking. "You placed an advertisement," Lena said, keeping her voice steady. "I responded. You didn't reply, but you didn't refuse either, so I took it as permission to show up uninvited. I sent a letter from Omaha. If you'd read your mail, I read what matters." That letter didn't. Lena felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she forced herself to breathe. Getting angry wouldn't help. She'd learned that lesson young, too. "Mr. Mercer, I've traveled a long way. I sold everything I had to make this trip. I'm not asking for charity. Your advertisement specified a woman willing to work in exchange for room and board and the possibility of marriage. I'm willing and able to work. I can cook, clean, sew, tend gardens, manage livestock. I don't need help. Your ranch suggests otherwise. The silence that followed was sharp enough to draw blood. Cole Mercer stepped forward into the light, and Lena got her first clear look at him. He wasn't old, maybe 35, but he carried age in his expression. Lines bracketed his mouth. His eyes were the color of winter sky, and just as cold. He wasn't handsome exactly, but there was something in the architecture of his face that suggested he might have been once before whatever happened to him happened. You got a sharp tongue for someone asking favors, he said. I'm not asking a favor. I'm proposing a transaction. You need help. I need work. We can help each other. I don't need help. You're living in a barn while your house falls apart. Your dog's half starved. Your fences are sagging, your garden's dead, and you're burning furniture for heat. She pointed at the tack room behind him, where she could now see a broken chair feeding the fire. You need help. Cole's jaw worked. For a moment she thought he might actually throw her off the property. Then he laughed. A short, bitter sound with no humor in it. You always this stubborn? Only when I'm right. He studied her for a long moment. She studied him back, refusing to look away first. That was important. People respected strength, even if they didn't like it. I placed that advertisement 6 months ago, Cole said finally. I was drunk and stupid and thought maybe I could. He stopped, shook his head. Doesn't matter. I changed my mind. I don't want a wife. I don't want help. I want to be left alone. Well, that's unfortunate because I'm here now. Not my problem. Actually, it is. I spent my last dollar getting here. I can't go back. So either you let me stay and work, or you'll have a woman freezing to death in your yard. Your choice. Cole's expression didn't change. That's not going to work on me. Guilt and manipulation. I'm not trying to manipulate you. I'm stating facts. I have no money, no family, no prospects. You advertised for help. Here I am. You can turn me away, but that won't change my situation. It'll just move it down the road where it becomes someone else's problem. Or you can let me stay, let me earn my keep, and see if we can both come out of this better than we started. And if I say no? Lena met his eyes. Then I'll sleep in your barn tonight, and we'll have this conversation again in the morning, and the morning after that, until you either give in or shoot me. Something flickered across Cole's face, surprise maybe, or recognition, like he was seeing something he hadn't expected. You're serious? Completely. He turned away, walking back toward the fire. Lena waited, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was it. He'd either send her away or... One night, Cole said without looking at her. You can stay in the house tonight. Tomorrow morning, Pruitt comes back through on his way to town. You'll be on that wagon. And if I refuse? Then I'll tie you to it. Lena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. One night wasn't much, but it was something. A foothold. A chance to prove herself indispensable. Thank you, she said. Cole grunted. Don't thank me. This changes nothing. He walked past her toward the house, not checking to see if she followed. The dog fell into step behind him automatically, and after a moment, Lena did the same. The back door opened into a mudroom thick with dust and mouse droppings. Beyond that was a kitchen with a cast-iron stove, a scarred wooden table, and cabinets that hung slightly crooked. Everything was clean enough but unused, like a stage set waiting for actors. Cole didn't stop, just kept walking through to the front room. Bedroom's upstairs, second door on the left. Don't touch anything else. What about supper? Lena asked. I don't eat much. You should. You're half-starved too. He stopped at the base of the stairs and turned to look at her. His expression was unreadable. I agreed to give you a roof for one night. I didn't agree to conversation. Conversation's free. And from what I can see, you could use more of it. For a moment, she thought she'd pushed too far. Then Cole shook his head and continued up the stairs, his footsteps heavy on the wood. Lena stood alone in the cold house and listened to him walk away. Somewhere above her, a door closed. Then silence. She set down her bags and looked around. The front room held a sofa, 2 chairs, and a small table. Everything was positioned to face the fireplace, which was dark and cold. Ashes from the last fire still lay in the grate, undisturbed. On the mantel sat a daguerreotype in a silver frame, a young woman with dark hair and serious eyes, wearing a high-collared dress. Pretty, in a fragile sort of way. The wife. Had to be. Lena looked away. Other people's ghosts weren't her business. She moved into the kitchen and began taking inventory. The stove was cold but functional. The pantry held basics: flour, cornmeal, dried beans, salt pork, coffee. Not much variety, but enough to work with. Under the sink, she found a bucket and a rag. She should rest. She should go upstairs and sleep and save her strength for tomorrow's argument. But her hands needed something to do, and idle time meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering why she'd left Omaha in such a hurry. So she built a fire in the stove. While it heated, she pumped water from the hand pump at the sink. It took 30 strokes to prime it, but eventually water sputtered out, rust-colored at first, then clear. She filled the bucket, added lye soap from a bar she found under the sink, and started scrubbing. The table first. Years of grime and dust came away to reveal honey-colored wood underneath. Then the counters, the stovetop, the floor. Her back began to ache, but she ignored it, working steadily as the room slowly transformed. She lost track of time. When she finally stopped, the kitchen was clean, the fire was crackling in the stove, and the smell of lye soap had replaced the smell of abandonment. Her hands were red and raw, her dress was filthy, and she was exhausted. But the room looked lived in again, almost hopeful. She put a pot of water on to boil and searched the pantry again. Dried beans would take too long. Salt pork could work. She found some potatoes in a root cellar accessed through a trap door, small and wrinkled, but edible. An onion that was more sprout than bulb. It wasn't much, but she'd made meals from less. She worked quickly, not thinking, just doing. Chopped the potatoes, diced the salt pork, let it render in the pan until the kitchen filled with the smell of cooking meat. Added the onion, then the potatoes, then water. Salt. A pinch of dried herbs she found in an unlabeled jar. Thyme, maybe. Let it all simmer. While the food cooked, she made coffee. Strong enough to strip paint the way her father had liked it. When the meal was ready, she set 2 bowls on the table, 2 spoons, 2 cups of coffee. Then she stood at the base of the stairs and called up, "Supper's ready." Silence. "Mr. Mercer, there's food if you want it." More silence, then footsteps. Cole appeared at the top of the stairs, looking down at her with an expression she couldn't read. "I told you I don't eat much. And I told you that you should. This'll keep for tomorrow if you don't want it now, but it's better warm." She turned and went back to the kitchen, not waiting for his response. Either he'd come or he wouldn't. Pushing would only make him dig in harder. She sat down at the table and began to eat. The food was simple but hot, and she hadn't eaten since breakfast in Bozeman. Bread and cheese Pruitt had shared from his lunch pail. Her stomach cramped around the first few bites, then settled. She was halfway through her bowl when she heard footsteps on the stairs. Cole appeared in the doorway, still wearing the same clothes, still radiating that same cold distance. He stood there for a moment, looking at the cleaned kitchen, the fire in the stove, the second bowl waiting on the table. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "I know. I wanted to." "Why?" Lena set down her spoon. "Because I'm not a guest, Mr. Mercer. I'm someone asking for a job, and the best way to prove I can do the job is to do it." He didn't respond, just crossed to the table and sat down. He picked up the spoon, looked at the food for a moment, then started eating. He didn't wolf it down like a starving man, but he didn't pick at it either. He ate steadily, mechanically, like someone refueling a machine. They ate in silence. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. The fire in the stove crackled and popped. The dog scratched at the back door and Cole got up to let it in. The animal padded over to the stove and collapsed on the floor with a sigh. When Cole finished eating, he carried his bowl to the sink and stood there for a moment, staring out the window at the gathering darkness. "That your wife?" Lena asked, nodding toward the front room. "In the picture. That's none of your business." "Fair enough." He turned to face her. "Tomorrow morning you leave. That's the deal." "I remember. I'm not changing my mind. I didn't ask you to." He looked like he wanted to say something else, but instead he just nodded and walked out. She heard him climb the stairs again. A door opened and closed. Lena sat alone in the kitchen and finished her coffee. Then she washed both bowls, both spoons, both cups. She banked the fire in the stove so it would last through the night. She refilled the dog's water bowl and left it by the door. Then she climbed the stairs to the second floor. The hallway was narrow and dark. 4 doors, all closed. Second on the left, Cole had said. She tried the handle. Unlocked. The room was small, barely big enough for the single bed and dresser it contained. The mattress was thin, the blanket threadbare, but it was clean and dry, and that was more than she'd had some nights. She undressed down to her chemise, folded her clothes, and crawled under the blanket. The bed creaked under her weight. Through the wall, she could hear movement in the next room. Footsteps, the creak of floorboards, the sound of a body settling onto a mattress. Cole's room. They were separated by maybe 8 inches of wood and plaster. Lena closed her eyes and tried not to think about tomorrow. Tried not to think about what she'd do if he really did force her onto that wagon. Tried not to think about the fact that she'd gambled everything on a stranger's advertisement and might lose it all. Instead, she thought about the kitchen. How it had looked when she arrived versus how it looked now. That was real. That was proof that she could make a difference here, if he'd just let her. She fell asleep still thinking it, her hands raw and aching, her body exhausted, her mind refusing to accept defeat. Lena woke to darkness and cold. For a moment she didn't remember where she was, and panic spiked through her, that old familiar fear of waking up somewhere you didn't choose, somewhere that might hurt you. Then it came back. Montana. The ranch. Cole Mercer. She sat up, shivering. Through the window she could see the first gray hints of dawn. The house was completely silent, no footsteps, no movement, nothing. She dressed quickly in the dark, her fingers clumsy with cold. When she went downstairs, the kitchen was empty. The fire in the stove had died to embers. No sign of Cole. The dog raised its head from its spot by the stove, watching her. "Morning," Lena said quietly. The dog's tail thumped once. She rebuilt the fire, started coffee, and stood at the window watching the sky lighten. In the growing light, she could see the barn, the corrals, the pastures beyond. Cattle moving slowly through dead grass, the creek glinting like hammered silver. It was beautiful in a stark, unforgiving way, like something painted by an artist who only used 3 colors and didn't believe in mercy. She heard footsteps on the porch. The front door opened and closed. Then Cole appeared in the kitchen doorway, his hair wet like he'd dunked his head in the horse trough, his face freshly shaved. He stopped when he saw her. "You're up early," he said. "So are you." He grunted and moved to the stove, pouring himself coffee. He drank it black, standing with his back to her, staring at nothing. "Pruitt comes through around 9, he said. "You'll want to be ready." "What if I'm not?" "Then I'll make you ready." "You'd really drag a woman onto a wagon against her will?" Cole turned to look at her. "If that's what it takes." "Why?" Lena asked. "What are you so afraid of?" The question hung in the air between them like smoke. Cole's jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought she'd broken through to something. Then his expression went flat again. "I'm not afraid. I just know when something's a bad idea." "How? You haven't even given it a chance." "I don't need to. I know how this story ends." "Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you're so busy protecting yourself from what might happen that you're missing what's actually happening. You're dying here, Mr. Mercer." "Slowly. This ranch is dying. Everything around you is dying. And you're letting it happen because you'd rather feel nothing than risk feeling something again." Cole set his cup down with enough force that coffee slopped over the rim. "You don't know anything about me." "I know enough. I know you loved someone and lost her. I know it broke you. I know you're hiding from the world because if you don't let anyone in, they can't hurt you. But that's not living. That's just existing. And there's a difference. Is that what you tell yourself? That you're living?" The words hit harder than she'd expected. Lena felt something twist in her chest, but she didn't look away. "I'm trying to," she said quietly. "Every day I'm trying, and some days I fail, but at least I'm trying." "What are you doing?" Cole stared at her for a long moment. Then he picked up his cup and walked out. Lena stood alone in the kitchen, her heart pounding, her hands shaking. She'd pushed too hard. She knew it. But she couldn't seem to stop herself. Something about this man, this place, this whole impossible situation made her want to fight. She finished her coffee and went outside. The morning was cold and clear, the sky a blue so deep it hurt to look at. Her breath steamed in the air. Cole was in the barn, mucking out stalls. She could hear the scrape of the shovel, the thud of manure hitting the wheelbarrow, the rhythmic sound of a man working off anger. Lena walked past the barn to the chicken coop. The structure was sound but filthy, the nesting boxes empty, the floor crusted with old droppings. No chickens. Another thing abandoned. She found a rake and a shovel in a small shed and started cleaning. It was hard work, made harder by the cold and her still raw hands, but it felt good to do something useful, to make something better. She was dumping the fourth load of soiled bedding into a compost pile when she heard the wagon. Pruitt pulled up in front of the house. The same two tired horses, the same sagging wagon. He climbed down slowly like a man who'd done this too many times. "Morning, Miss Whitaker," he called out. "You ready?" Lena stuck the shovel in the ground and walked toward him, wiping her hands on her dress. "No," Pruitt sighed. "He tell you it was time to go?" "He did. I'm not going." "That ain't really your choice." "Actually, it is." Cole emerged from the barn, still carrying the shovel. He stopped when he saw them, his expression unreadable. "Pruitt," he said with a nod. "Cole, I'm here for Miss Whitaker." "I know." "She says she ain't going." "I know that too." Pruitt looked between them, his weathered face creasing with confusion. "So, what are we doing here?" Cole drove the shovel into the ground and started walking toward them. His stride was measured, unhurried, but there was something in it that made Lena's pulse quicken. He stopped a few feet away, looking not at Pruitt, but at her. "You got 1 month," he said. Lena's breath caught. "What?" "1 month. You work, you earn your keep, you stay out of my way. After that, we'll see. But don't get comfortable, and don't think this means anything it doesn't. It's a trial period, nothing more." "I understand." "I'm not changing my mind about the marriage part. That's off the table." "Fine. And if I tell you to leave after the month, you leave. No arguments." "Agreed." Cole looked at Pruitt. "I guess you made a trip for nothing." Pruitt's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. "I guess I did." He looked at Lena. "You sure about this, miss?" "Completely." He shook his head slowly. "Your funeral." He climbed back onto the wagon, clicked his tongue at the horses, and started back down the road. Lena and Cole stood in the yard, watching him disappear over the rise. When the wagon was gone, Cole turned to her. "Don't make me regret this." "I won't. And don't try to fix me. I'm not a broken thing that needs mending." "I'm not here to fix you, Mr. Mercer. I'm here to work." He studied her for another moment, then nodded once. "There's fence line that needs checking in the north pasture. Can you ride?" "Yes." "Saddle's in the barn. Take the roan mare. She's gentle." He walked away without waiting for a response, back toward whatever task he'd been working on before. Lena stood in the yard, her heart still racing, a smile threatening to break across her face. 1 month. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The roan mare was gentle, like Cole had said, but stubborn in that way horses get when they've been mostly idle. Lena spent 20 minutes convincing her that yes, they were actually going to leave the barn. And no, she couldn't just stand there chewing hay all morning. By the time they reached the north pasture, Lena's thighs were already aching. She'd ridden before, but not regularly, and her body was reminding her of that fact with every step the mare took. The fence line stretched across rolling terrain, wooden posts connected by 3 strands of barbed wire. Some sections were intact. Others sagged so badly the cattle could have stepped over them without noticing. A few posts had rotted through completely and fallen over, taking the wire with them. Lena dismounted and tied the mare to a solid post, then walked the line slowly, cataloging the damage. It would take days to fix properly, maybe weeks. She'd need tools she didn't have, skills she'd have to learn, and strength she wasn't sure she possessed. But she'd figure it out. She always did. She was examining a particularly bad section when she heard hoofbeats. Cole appeared on a tall bay gelding, a coil of wire and a hammer strapped to his saddle. "Bad?" he asked, pulling up beside her. "Could be worse. Most of the posts are solid, the wire's the bigger problem." He swung down from the saddle with an ease that spoke of decades in the saddle. "I'll show you how to splice it. You can handle the rest." For the next hour, Cole worked in near silence, demonstrating how to cut damaged wire, how to twist new sections into place, how to tension it properly so it wouldn't sag. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, wasting no motion. He didn't explain much, just showed her and expected her to remember. Lena watched carefully, asked questions when she didn't understand, and tried to ignore the way her hands protested every time she gripped the wire cutters. By the time Cole declared the first section done, her palms were bleeding through the worn work gloves she'd found in the barn. "You'll want to wrap those," Cole said, nodding at her hands. "Infection out here can kill you." "I'll be fine." Wasn't a suggestion. He pulled a clean handkerchief from his pocket and handed it to her. She took it, surprised by the gesture, and tore it in half to wrap both palms. "Thank you." He grunted and turned back to his horse. "You know how to do this now?" "I think so." "Then do it. I've got other work." He mounted up, gathered the reins, then paused. "Don't push yourself, stupid. Dead workers don't help me none." Before she could respond, he'd turned the bay and headed back toward the barn at a ground-eating trot. Lena stood alone in the pasture, the wind pulling at her hair, her hands throbbing. In the distance, the mountains rose like broken teeth against the sky. A hawk circled overhead, riding thermals only it could feel. She got back to work. By the time the sun reached its peak, she'd repaired 3 more sections and was working on a 4th. Her hands had gone from hurting to numb, which she took as either a good sign or a very bad one. Sweat had soaked through her dress despite the cold, and her shoulders felt like someone had beaten them with a fence post. The mare dozed in the weak sunlight, one hip cocked, completely uninterested in Lena's suffering. "You're no help at all," Lena muttered. The horse flicked an ear but didn't open her eyes. Lena was twisting wire when she heard voices, male voices, multiple, coming from the direction of the ranch. She straightened up, wiping sweat from her forehead with her sleeve, and squinted into the distance. 4 riders approached at an easy lope. As they got closer, she could make out details. Good horses, good tack, clothes that were work-worn but well-maintained. Men who had money but weren't soft about it. They pulled up about 30 feet away, staying mounted, studying her with the frank assessment men gave women when they thought no one was watching. "Afternoon," the lead rider said. He was maybe 40, with a thick mustache and eyes that had seen everything twice. "You must be the new hire." "Must be," Lena said, setting down the wire cutters. "Can I help you?" "We're looking for Cole. He around?" "Back at the ranch, I expect. You're welcome to ride down and find him." "We might do that." The man shifted in his saddle, leather creaking. "I'm Tom Rafferty. I run the Double R, south of here. These are some of my hands." "Lena Whitaker. That's your full name? Or are you Mrs. Something?" The question was casual, but loaded. Lena recognized the trap. If she said she was married, they'd ask where her husband was. If she said she wasn't, they'd wonder what she was doing alone on Cole Mercer's ranch. "Miss Whitaker," she said, "I'm here to work." "That right?" Rafferty's eyes traveled over her torn dress, her bloodied gloves, her disheveled hair. "Cole finally break down and hire some help?" "Something like that." "Must have been desperate. No offense, but you don't look like ranch help." "I'm learning." One of the other men, younger with a weak chin, snorted. "Learning fence work? That's rich. Next you'll be branding cattle." "If that's what needs doing," Rafferty smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You got spirit, Miss Whitaker, I'll give you that. But spirit don't amount to much when winter comes and you're snowed in for 3 months with a man you barely know. You thought about that?" "I've thought about a lot of things, Mr. Rafferty. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." She turned her back on them deliberately, picking up the wire cutters, resuming her work. It was a calculated risk. Men like that either respected boldness or punished it, and she wouldn't know which until it was too late to change course. Behind her, she heard Rafferty chuckle. "You be careful out here, Miss Whitaker. This country eats people who don't respect it." "I'll keep that in mind." The sound of hoofbeats receded. Lena didn't turn around until they were gone, and even then her hands were shaking. She'd handled that wrong, probably. Been too sharp, too defensive. But she was tired and hurting, and in no mood to be interrogated by strangers who thought her business was theirs. She worked until the light started to fade, then gathered her tools and rode back to the ranch. The mare moved faster on the return trip, sensing dinner and rest ahead. Cole was in the barn when she arrived, forking hay into the cattle pen. He didn't look up as she unsaddled the mare, but she knew he was aware of her presence. The man had eyes in the back of his head, apparently. "Rafferty came by," she said, leading the mare into her stall. "I saw. He wanted to talk to you." "He always does. Never has anything worth saying." Lena rubbed the mare down with a handful of straw, working the worst of the sweat from her coat. "He seemed curious about me." "He's curious about everything. It's what small men do when they got nothing better to occupy their time." "Is he trouble?" Cole finally looked at her. "Everyone's trouble if you let them be. Rafferty just tries harder than most." He stuck the pitchfork in the ground. "You get that fence done?" "About half. I'll finish tomorrow." "How are your hands?" Lena held them up. The makeshift bandages were soaked through with blood and dirt. "Still attached." "Barely." Cole crossed to a shelf and pulled down a tin. "Come here." She approached warily. He grabbed her wrist, not roughly, but firmly, and unwrapped the bandages. His hands were calloused and warm, surprisingly gentle as he examined the damage. "You should have stopped when they started bleeding." "You said dead workers don't help. Didn't say anything about bleeding ones." "Don't be smart." He opened the tin, some kind of salve that smelled like pine and something medicinal, and began working it into her palms. His touch was clinical, impersonal, but Lena felt it anyway. The warmth of his skin against hers. The careful way he spread the salve across each cut. When was the last time someone had touched her to help rather than hurt? She couldn't remember. "This'll sting," Cole said. It did, like fire and ice at once, but Lena didn't pull away. He wrapped her hands in clean cloth, tying the knots with practiced efficiency. When he finished, he released her wrists and stepped back, the professional distance slamming back into place. "Keep them dry tonight. Change the bandages in the morning. Thank you." He nodded and turned back to his work. Conversation over. Lena walked to the house, her hands throbbing but clean, her mind churning. Cole Mercer was a contradiction, cold but careful, distant but attentive, like a man fighting a war with himself where both sides were losing. She made dinner, salt pork and beans again, cornbread from the last of the cornmeal, and set 2 places at the table. When Cole came in, he washed at the pump without being asked, then sat down and ate without comment. They ate in silence. It was becoming their routine, this quiet coexistence. Not hostile, not friendly, just 2 people occupying the same space, circling each other like wary dogs. "I need to go to town tomorrow," Cole said suddenly. "Supply run." Lena looked up. "You want me to come?" "No, stay here. Work the fence. The list's on the counter if you think of anything we need." After he went upstairs, Lena added her items to the list in careful script. Cornmeal, thread, lye soap. Basic things. Necessary things. Nothing that could be mistaken for vanity or want. She slept poorly that night. Her hands hurt too much for rest, and every time she drifted off, she dreamed of Omaha, of the boarding house, of the owner's son with his damp hands and wet eyes, of the way he'd cornered her in the kitchen and told her she should be grateful for his attention. She'd broken his nose with a cast-iron pan. That's when she knew she had to leave. She woke before dawn to the sound of wagon wheels. Through her window, she watched Cole load supplies into the buckboard, empty grain sacks, a box of things she couldn't identify. He worked quickly, efficiently, a man who'd done this 100 times. He didn't look toward the house, didn't call out goodbye, just climbed onto the seat, gathered the reins, and drove off into the gray morning. Lena got up and dressed, her hands stiff and aching. The salve had helped, but not enough. She rewrapped them carefully, then went downstairs to start coffee. The house felt different with Cole gone, emptier somehow, though he barely spoke even when he was here. She found herself listening for his footsteps, his presence, and feeling off balance when they didn't come. Ridiculous. She'd been alone most of her life. She didn't need anyone. She made herself breakfast, leftover cornbread and coffee, then headed out to continue work on the fence. The morning was cold and clear, her breath forming clouds that dissipated in the wind. She'd been working maybe 2 hours when she heard the rider. Not multiple horses this time, just one, coming fast. Lena straightened up, shading her eyes against the sun. The rider was young, maybe 18, on a lathered horse that had been pushed hard. He pulled up short when he saw her, the horse dancing sideways. "Where's Mercer?" he demanded. In town. Won't be back until late. Damn. The boy, because that's what he was really, despite his attempt at a mustache, looked around frantically. I need help. My sister, she's... He stopped, swallowed hard. She's having a baby, and something's wrong. Pa's away, and Ma sent me to fetch the doc, but he's gone to Bozeman for a surgery. Somebody said Mercer's wife used to help with births. Mercer's wife is dead. I know, but... The boy's eyes were wild with panic. Please, there's nobody else. She's been laboring since yesterday, and the baby won't come, and there's blood, and... Take me there, Lena said. You know midwifery? Enough. A lie, but a necessary one. She'd helped with 2 births back in Omaha, assisted the actual midwife, watched and learned and remembered. It wasn't much, but it was more than nothing. She grabbed the mare's reins and swung up bareback, her hands screaming in protest. Lead the way! Fast! They rode hard across open range, the boy's horse flagging but still giving everything it had. Lena's mare stretched out, surprisingly game, sensing the urgency. The homestead was small, a cabin, a barn, a few outbuildings scattered like dice on the prairie. They pulled up in a spray of dirt, and the boy was off his horse before it fully stopped. Ma, I brought help! A woman appeared in the doorway, early 40s, gray-streaked hair, face drawn with exhaustion and fear. Her apron was stained with blood. Where's the doctor? Gone to Bozeman. This is... The boy faltered. I don't know your name. Lena Whitaker. Show me. The woman, Mrs. Henderson, she introduced herself as, led Lena inside. The cabin was clean but cramped. One main room with a curtained-off area for privacy. Behind the curtain, a girl, couldn't be more than 16, lay on a bed soaked with sweat and blood. Her face was gray, her breathing shallow. How long? Lena asked, stripping off her coat. 20 hours. The pain started yesterday morning. Water's broken? Hours ago. Lena washed her hands at the basin, rewrapped them quickly, then approached the bed. What's your name? She asked the girl gently. Sarah? Her voice was barely a whisper. Sarah, I'm going to help you, but I need to check the baby's position. It's going to hurt. Can you be brave for me? Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. Lena examined her quickly, carefully, and her heart sank. The baby was breech, feet first instead of head first, and from what she could feel, one foot was caught on something, maybe the hip bone, maybe cord. No wonder the girl couldn't deliver. Mrs. Henderson, Lena said quietly, I need clean linens, hot water, whiskey, if you have it, and sharp scissors boiled clean. The woman's face went even paler. Is she... Get me what I need, now. Mrs. Henderson moved. Lena turned back to Sarah, smoothing the hair from her forehead. Listen to me carefully. Your baby is positioned wrong. I'm going to try to turn it, but it's going to hurt worse than anything you've felt so far. If I can't turn it, I'll have to deliver it feet first, which is dangerous for both of you. Do you understand? Will my baby die? Not if I can help it, but I need you to trust me and do exactly what I say when I say it. Can you do that? Sarah nodded, her hand gripping Lena's so tight it sent pain shooting through the bandages. Mrs. Henderson returned with the supplies. Lena took the whiskey bottle and handed it to Sarah. Drink as much as you can. While Sarah drank, Lena turned to Mrs. Henderson. I need you to hold her shoulders. Don't let her move no matter what. What are you going to do? What needs doing? Lena positioned herself at the foot of the bed, took a breath, and began trying to turn the baby externally. She pressed on Sarah's abdomen, feeling for the baby's position, trying to coax it into rotating. Sarah screamed, a sound that made Lena's stomach clench, but she didn't stop. The baby wouldn't turn. Either there wasn't enough fluid left, or it was too far engaged in the birth canal. Plan B, then. Sarah, listen, I can't turn the baby, so we're going to deliver it as is. When the next contraction comes, I need you to push as hard as you can, harder than you think possible, understand? I can't. I've been pushing for hours. You can. You will. Because that baby needs you to fight for it, and you're stronger than you know. Lena met her eyes, willing the girl to believe it. You're going to do this. We're going to do this together. The next contraction hit. Sarah pushed, her scream turning into a guttural sound of pure effort. Lena worked quickly, feeling for the baby's feet, trying to guide them. One foot appeared, then the other. Progress. Finally. Again. When the next one comes, give me everything you have. It took 4 more contractions. 4 more rounds of Sarah screaming and pushing and Lena guiding and praying to any god that might be listening. Finally, the baby slipped free in a rush of fluid and blood. A boy. Small. Not breathing. Lena cleared his mouth and nose quickly, turned him upside down, and smacked his back. Once. Twice. On the 3rd hit, he gasped and began to cry, a thin, reedy sound that was the most beautiful thing Lena had ever heard. "He's alive!" Mrs. Henderson sobbed. "Oh, sweet mercy! He's alive!" Lena tied off the cord with thread and cut it, then wrapped the baby in clean linen and handed him to Sarah, who clutched him to her chest and wept. "You did it," Lena said softly. "You were so brave." Sarah just cried, holding her son, and Lena turned to deal with the afterbirth. There was more bleeding than she liked. The labor had been too long, too traumatic, but it slowed with pressure and time. When everything was done, Lena stepped outside on shaking legs and vomited into the dirt. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold herself upright. She just delivered a baby, a breech baby. She could have killed them both. Could have made mistakes that, "Miss Whitaker?" She turned to find the boy, what was his name, standing there with a cup of water. "You saved them," he said simply. "Both of them." Lena took the water and drank it down. "Your sister saved herself. I just helped. Pa's going to want to pay you. I don't need payment, but tell your father I'm glad I could help. That's payment enough." She stayed another hour making sure Sarah was stable, showing Mrs. Henderson how to watch for signs of infection, how to help with the nursing. Then she climbed back on the mare and started the long ride back to Cole's ranch. The sun was setting by the time she arrived. She was exhausted, filthy. Her hands were bleeding again through the bandages, and she smelled like blood and sweat and birth. Cole's wagon was back in the yard. She unsaddled the mare and turned her into the corral, then trudged toward the house. Cole met her at the door, taking one look at her and stepping aside. "What happened?" "Breech birth at the Henderson place. Mother and baby are fine." "You delivered a baby?" "Somebody had to." She walked past him to the kitchen, pumped water, and began washing her hands. Cole followed, watching her. "You look half dead." "I feel fully dead." "There's stew on the stove, brought meat from town." Lena looked at him surprised. "You cooked?" "Don't sound so shocked." "I managed before you got here." He paused. "How bad was it?" "Bad enough, but they're alive. That's what matters." Cole studied her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression that she couldn't read. Then he crossed to the stove and ladled stew into a bowl. "Sit, eat, then sleep." For once, Lena didn't argue. She sat, she ate, and afterward she climbed the stairs to her room and fell into bed without even taking off her boots. She dreamed of crying babies and bleeding women and hands that wouldn't stop shaking. But underneath it all, she dreamed of Cole standing in the kitchen, watching her with something that might have been respect, or might have been the beginning of something more dangerous than that. Word spread fast in a place where nothing much happened. By the end of the week, 3 different families had stopped by the ranch with offerings. A smoked ham from the Hendersons, preserves from a woman Lena had never met, a sack of potatoes from old man Garrett, who tipped his hat and mumbled something about good work before riding off. Cole accepted each gift with minimal conversation, stacking them in the pantry without comment. But Lena noticed he stopped locking the front door during the day. The weather turned properly cold. Snow fell in fits and starts, never enough to stick, but enough to remind them winter wasn't finished yet. Lena worked through it, finishing the fence line, mucking stalls, chopping wood until her shoulders screamed. Her hands healed slowly, forming calluses over the cuts, toughening into something more useful than they'd been. Cole watched her sometimes. She'd feel his eyes on her while she worked, that measuring gaze trying to figure out what she was. But he never said much beyond what was necessary. Instructions. Corrections. The occasional grunt that might have been approval. 2 weeks into her month, he fixed her window. She woke one morning to find the draft gone, the frame squared, new glazing compound sealing the glass. He hadn't asked permission or announced his intentions, just done it while she slept, quiet as a ghost. She found him in the barn, repairing a bridle. "Thank you for the window." He didn't look up. "Was wasting heat." "Still, thank you." He grunted and kept working, but something in his posture had softened just slightly, like a door opening an inch. That afternoon, Lena started on the garden. The beds were a disaster. 2 years of neglect had turned them into weed-choked rectangles of disappointment. She spent hours pulling dead plants, turning soil that had gone hard as clay, trying to remember everything her mother had taught her about coaxing life from dirt. She was elbow-deep in the third bed when Cole appeared with a wheelbarrow full of composted manure. "Soil's too poor," he said. "Won't grow nothing without amendment." Together they worked the compost in, not speaking, just moving in parallel. The silence between them had changed, less hostile now, more like two people who'd agreed to occupy the same space without fighting about it. "Your wife," Lena said, then stopped. "Sorry, that's not my business." "No, it's not." Cole leaned on his shovel. "But you're going to ask anyway." "Did she tend this garden?" "Every day. Said it was the only thing that stayed beautiful out here." His voice was flat, carefully empty. She was wrong about that, but she believed it. "How long has she been gone?" 3 years. Fever took her in January, dead in 4 days. He drove the shovel into the dirt. "That answer your questions?" "I'm sorry." "Don't be. You didn't kill her." He walked away before she could respond, leaving the wheelbarrow behind. Lena watched him go, her chest tight. 3 years. 3 years he'd been out here alone, letting everything fall apart because fixing it meant admitting she was gone. That life continued without her. She understood that better than he knew. That evening, she made a proper meal. Roast chicken from one of the scrawny birds she'd found hiding in the barn, rafters, potatoes, carrots from the root cellar that were more wrinkle than vegetable. It wasn't fancy, but it was real food, and the house filled with smells that felt almost like home. Cole came in without being called, washed up, sat down. He ate steadily, methodically, not tasting so much as refueling. "It's good," he said finally. "It's adequate." "Better than adequate?" He looked at her across the table. "You don't have to do this, you know. The cooking. I can feed myself." "I know. But I like doing it. Makes me feel useful." "You are useful. Fence is done, barn's cleaner than it's been in years, and apparently you can deliver babies. That's useful." "Is that a compliment, Mr. Mercer?" "It's a fact." But something that might have been a smile tugged at his mouth before he caught it. They finished eating in comfortable quiet. Lena washed the dishes while Cole sat at the table drinking coffee, staring at nothing. When she was done, she sat across from him, her own cup warming her hands. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "You can ask. Don't mean I'll answer." "Why did you really place that advertisement?" Cole was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't respond. Then he sighed, a sound like air escaping from a punctured tire. "I was drunk, lonely, stupid. Thought maybe if I could just—" He stopped, shook his head. "Doesn't matter what I thought. It was a mistake." "Was it?" "Look around. Does this look like a place for starting over? It's barely a place for surviving." "Surviving's not nothing. It's not living either." He met her eyes. "You should have better than this. Better than me." "You don't get to decide what I should have." "No, but I get to decide what I'm capable of giving, and it's not much." Lena leaned forward. "You fixed my window. You taught me fence work. You bandaged my hands. You let me stay when you didn't have to. That's not nothing, Cole. That's—" She stopped, realizing she'd used his first name. He noticed, too, something flickering across his face. "That's what?" he asked quietly. "That's enough. For now." The moment stretched between them, fragile as spun glass. Then Cole stood abruptly, his chair scraping loud against the floor. "I'm going to check the cattle. Lock up when you go to bed." He was gone before she could respond, the door closing behind him with careful control. Lena sat alone in the kitchen, her heart beating too fast, wondering what exactly had just happened. The next morning, everything felt different and exactly the same. Cole was distant again, giving orders without meeting her eyes, working on the far side of the property. Lena threw herself into cleaning the upstairs, rooms she hadn't touched since arriving, full of dust and memories. The first two rooms were easy. Storage mostly, boxes of things nobody needed but couldn't throw away. The third room made her stop in the doorway. It was clearly the room that had belonged to Cole's wife. The bed was made, clothes still hanging in the wardrobe, a hairbrush on the dresser with long, dark hair still tangled in the bristles. Like a shrine to someone who'd just stepped out and might return any moment. Lena backed out carefully and closed the door. Some things weren't hers to clean. That afternoon, a rider came, not Rafferty this time, but a younger man in clean clothes and an expensive hat. He dismounted in front of the house where Lena was beating rugs on the porch rail. "Afternoon," he said with a smile too white and straight to be real. "I'm looking for Cole Mercer. He's out with the cattle." "And you are?" "Working." "Who are you?" The smile widened. "Victor Hale. My father owns the Big H spread, west of here. Biggest operation in the territory." "Good for him." "I was hoping to speak with Mr. Mercer about purchasing some of his land. We're expanding, and his north section would be perfect for our needs." "You'll have to take that up with Mr. Mercer." "I intend to, but perhaps you could mention it to him? Let him know I'm willing to pay generously, very generously." His eyes traveled over her in a way that made her skin crawl. "You're the woman who delivered the Henderson baby." "News travels. In this country, news is all we have. That was impressive work, from what I hear. You have medical training? Enough to get by. Modest. I like that." He stepped closer, and Lena resisted the urge to step back. "How long have you been working for Mercer?" "That's between me and Mr. Mercer." "Of course. I'm just curious. Pretty woman like you stuck out here with a man who barely speaks. Seems like a waste." "I don't recall asking your opinion." Victor laughed, not offended. "You're spirited. That's good. This country needs spirited women. Tell me, miss." "I didn't catch your name." "I didn't throw it." "Fair enough." He touched the brim of his hat. "I'll come back another time to discuss business with Mr. Mercer, but perhaps we'll see each other in town. I'd be happy to show you around, introduce you to people who matter." "I can find my own way, thanks." "I'm sure you can, but the offer stands." He mounted his horse with practiced ease. "Think about what I said, about the land. Mercer's holding on to something that's dying anyway. Might as well profit from it before there's nothing left to sell." He rode off before she could tell him where he could put his offer. Lena went back to beating rugs with more force than necessary, taking out her anger on dust and dirt. Cole came back at dusk, tired and covered in mud. He washed at the pump while Lena finished dinner. "Victor Hale stopped by," she said, setting plates on the table. Cole's hands stilled. "What did he want?" "To buy your north section. Said his father's expanding." "He can want all he likes. I'm not selling." "He seemed pretty confident you would." "Then he's stupid as well as pushy." Cole dried his hands roughly. "What else did he say?" "That I should let him show me around town. Meet important people." Something dark crossed Cole's face. "You tell him to go to hell?" "More or less." "Good. The Hales think money makes them better than everyone else. It just makes them dangerous." He sat down hard. "Stay away from Victor. He's not someone you want to know." "Because he wants your land?" "Because he thinks everything's for sale if the price is right, including people." They ate in tense silence. Lena could feel Cole's anger radiating across the table like heat from a stove. When he finished, he stood abruptly. "I'm going into town tomorrow." "You're coming with me." "Why?" "Because Victor Hale showing up here asking questions means people are talking. And if people are talking, you need to be seen with me so they know you're under my protection." "I don't need your protection." "Out here you do, whether you like it or not." He grabbed his coat. "Be ready at first light." The ride to town took 2 hours in the buckboard, most of it spent in silence. Cole sat rigid beside her, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the road. Lena watched the landscape roll past and wondered what she'd gotten herself into. The town, if you could call it that, consisted of maybe 20 buildings clustered around a single dirt street. General store, saloon, livery stable, church, handful of houses. Everything looked temporary, like the people who'd built it weren't sure they'd stay. Cole pulled up in front of the general store and set the brake. "Stay close. Don't wander off." "I'm not a child." "Didn't say you were." But this town's full of bored men with too much time and not enough sense. I'd rather not have to break anyone's face today. They went inside together. The store was dim and cramped, shelves stacked with everything from canned goods to rifle ammunition. A woman behind the counter looked up, her expression shifting from neutral to interested when she saw them. Cole Mercer, been a while. Mrs. Patterson? And who's this? Lena Whitaker. She's working my ranch. Mrs. Patterson's eyebrows climbed. Is that right? Well, heard about the Henderson baby. That was good work. Thank you. We could use someone with those skills around here. Doc's getting old, and he's gone half the time anyway. She studied Lena with sharp eyes. You planning to stay? That remains to be seen. Well, what can I get for you folks? They filled their order, flour, sugar, coffee, other staples, while Mrs. Patterson chattered about weather and cattle prices and who was feuding with whom. Lena listened carefully, filing away names and relationships. Information was currency out here. They were loading supplies into the wagon when Rafferty appeared with two of his men. He tipped his hat to Lena, ignored Cole completely. Miss Whitaker, pleasure seeing you in town. Mr. Rafferty. I hear you've been making quite a name for yourself. Saving lives, working Cole's ranch. Impressive. Just doing what needs doing. That's the spirit. He glanced at Cole. Mercer, you're a lucky man having such capable help. I'm aware. Of course, I imagine it must get lonely out there. Big ranch, just the two of you. His smile didn't reach his eyes. People talk, you know. Might want to consider making things proper. For her reputation. Cole's hand curled into a fist. Lena stepped forward before he could swing. My reputation is my concern, Mr. Rafferty, not yours. Just offering friendly advice. I didn't ask for it. Rafferty's smile thinned. Suit yourself. But this country's hard on women without protection. You remember that. He walked away, his men following. Cole stood rigid, shaking with suppressed anger. Get in the wagon, he said through clenched teeth. Cole, now! She climbed up. He followed, snapped the reins harder than necessary, and they lurched into motion. They were halfway out of town when he finally spoke. He's right. About what? People are going to talk. They're going to assume things, and it's going to make your life harder. I can handle hard. This is different. He stopped, his jaw working. I should marry you. Make it legal. That would shut them up. Lena's heart stuttered. You said marriage was off the table. It is. Should be. But if we don't... He shook his head. I'm trying to do right by you, even if I do it badly. You think marrying someone you don't love is doing right by them? I think protecting someone is. And if marriage does that, then maybe... No. Cole looked at her, surprised. No? I'm not marrying you because of gossip. If we ever get married, it'll be because we both want it. Not because Tom Rafferty has opinions about my reputation. You say that now. Wait until they start treating you like what? A whore? They can think what they want, Cole. I know what I am. So do you. That's all that matters. He stared at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most foolish. Probably both. That surprised a laugh out of him, short and rusty, but real. Yeah, probably. They rode in silence after that, but it felt different. Lighter, somehow. Like they'd crossed some invisible line and found the ground on the other side was solid. When they reached the ranch, Cole helped her unload supplies without being asked. They worked together, carrying sacks and boxes, stacking them in the pantry. At one point, their hands touched, reaching for the same item, and both pulled back quickly. Sorry, Lena said. Don't be. Cole looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in days. You're doing good work here. Better than I expected. Better than I deserve? You keep saying that like you don't deserve anything good. Maybe I don't. And maybe you need to stop deciding what you deserve and start accepting what's in front of you. Before he could respond, hoofbeats sounded in the yard. They both turned to see Victor Hale riding up, that same white smile plastered on his face. Mr. Mercer, finally caught you at home. Cole's expression went cold. Hale. Victor dismounted, his eyes flicking between them. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. You are. State your business. Direct. I like that. Victor pulled an envelope from his coat. My father asked me to deliver this personally. It's an offer for your north section. Very generous. More than generous, actually. Not interested. You haven't even looked at the number. Don't need to. I'm not selling. Victor's smile tightened. Mr. Mercer, I understand you have sentimental attachment to this land, but sentiment doesn't pay bills. And from what I can see, you're barely holding on here. Why struggle when you could sell at a profit and start fresh somewhere else? Because it's mine, and I'm not selling to your father so he can add it to his collection like a trophy. It's just land. Then why do you want it so badly? Victor's jaw ticked. He looked at Lena. Perhaps you could talk some sense into him, Miss Whitaker. A woman's perspective might help him see reason. Mr. Mercer doesn't need my perspective. It's his land, his choice. Even if that choice means both of you suffer needlessly, Lena stepped forward. You need to leave now. I'm sorry? You heard me. You've stated your business. He's declined. There's nothing else to discuss. Victor looked at Cole. You let her speak for you? I let her speak for herself, which is more than you do for any woman in your life, I'd wager. The smile disappeared completely. You're making a mistake, Mercer. My father doesn't take rejection well. Then he'll have to learn. Now get off my property. Victor mounted his horse, his movements stiff with anger. You'll regret this, both of you. He rode off at a gallop, leaving dust and tension in his wake. Cole stood watching until he disappeared, then turned to Lena. That went well? Do you think he'll cause trouble? Probably. The Hales aren't used to hearing no. He picked up the last supply sack. But that's my problem, not yours. If I'm living here, it's my problem too. He looked at her over the sack, something complicated crossing his face. Is that what you're doing, living here? Seems like it, unless you're planning to throw me out at the end of the month. The month's almost up. I know. So what happens then? Lena met his eyes. I stay, if you'll have me. And if I won't? Then I'll sleep in your barn and we'll fight about it every morning until you change your mind. Cole shook his head, but she caught the ghost of a smile. You're impossible. I've been called worse. That night, they ate dinner together like always. But something had shifted between them, subtle as smoke. Cole asked about her life before Montana, and she told him some of it. Not the bad parts, not yet, but enough that he could see the shape of her history. He told her about the ranch, about building it with his wife, about the dreams they'd had that died with her. It wasn't much, but it was more than they'd shared before. When Lena went upstairs, she found a new blanket on her bed. Thick wool, recently aired, with only a few moth holes. Cole must have pulled it from storage while she was cooking. She wrapped herself in it and lay in the dark, listening to the house settle around her. Through the wall, she heard Cole moving in his room. Heard the creak of bed springs as he lay down. For the first time since arriving, she felt something that might have been hope, or might have been the beginning of something more terrifying than that. The month ended without ceremony. Cole didn't mention it, and Lena didn't ask. She just kept working, kept cooking, kept existing in the spaces between his silences. If he wanted her gone, he'd have to say it out loud. He never did. April brought real warmth finally, the kind that made you believe winter might actually end someday. The garden responded first, tiny green shoots pushing through the amended soil like they'd been waiting for permission. Lena spent hours there, coaxing life from dirt, talking to plants the way her mother had taught her. Cole watched from a distance, pretending he wasn't. She caught him sometimes, standing in the barn doorway or pausing mid-task, his eyes tracking her movements. When she'd look up, he'd turn away quickly, like he'd been caught at something shameful. The third week of April, Tom Rafferty rode up with his whole crew, 8 men on horseback, looking like they meant business. Lena was hanging laundry when they arrived, and something in the way they spread out across the yard made her stomach drop. Cole emerged from the barn, his hand resting on the shotgun he now carried everywhere since Victor Hale's visit. Rafferty, you're on my land. I know where I am, Mercer. We got a problem. That's so. 3 of my cattle turned up dead this morning, shot. All of them on the section that borders your north pasture. Cole's expression didn't change. And you're telling me this because I want to know if you saw anything, heard anything. I didn't. That's convenient. It's the truth. I've been working this side of the property all week. Haven't been north in days. Rafferty leaned forward in his saddle. See, that's interesting. Because my foreman says he saw smoke coming from your north line yesterday. Like maybe someone was camping there. If someone was camping on my land, they didn't ask permission, and I didn't kill your cattle. Maybe not. But maybe you're harboring someone who did, or maybe you're trying to scare me off that section so you can expand north yourself. Cole's laugh was bitter. You think I give a damn about expanding? I can barely manage what I got. Then explain the smoke. I can't, but it wasn't me. The tension stretched taut as wire. Lena set down her laundry basket and walked toward the house, trying to look casual. But her hands were shaking. You calling me a liar, Rafferty? I'm saying dead cattle don't shoot themselves, and you're the closest neighbor to where they died. So go look for tracks, look for evidence, but don't come on my land making accusations you can't prove. One of Rafferty's men shifted in his saddle, his hand dropping toward the rifle on his hip. Cole saw it, raised the shotgun slightly, not pointing at anyone, just reminding everyone it was there. Easy, Rafferty said to his man. Then to Cole, this isn't over. It is unless you got proof, which you don't, so get off my property before I decide you're trespassing with intent. Rafferty's jaw worked. For a moment, Lena thought he might actually draw on Cole, consequences be damned. Then he jerked his reins hard enough to make his horse dance. You're making enemies, Mercer, more than you can afford. I've had enemies before. Still here. They rode off in a cloud of dust and hostility. Cole didn't lower the shotgun until they were over the rise and out of sight. Then he let out a breath and turned to find Lena watching from the porch. You should have stayed inside. Would you have? That's different. How? He opened his mouth, closed it, shook his head. Just do what I say next time, all right? Rafferty's scared and scared angry men do stupid things. Do you think he'll come back? Probably, but not today. He leaned the shotgun against the barn wall. I need to ride north, see if I can find who's been camping on my land. You stay here. Lock the doors. I'm coming with you. No, you're not. Cole, if someone's out there causing trouble, you shouldn't face them alone. 2 sets of eyes are better than 1. 2 targets are also easier to shoot than 1. Then don't get shot. He stared at her, frustration and something else warring in his expression. You're going to fight me on this. Every step of the way. Fine, but you do exactly what I say when I say it. Understood? Understood. They rode out within the hour, both armed, Cole with his shotgun, Lena with an old rifle she barely knew how to use. The day was clear and bright, which somehow made everything feel more dangerous. Like violence should happen in darkness, not under open sky. The north section was rough country, more rock than grass, with stands of pine that hadn't been logged because they weren't worth the effort. Cole followed the fence line, checking for breaks, looking for signs of passage. They found the camp in a hollow sheltered by trees. A cold fire pit, empty tin cans, boot prints in the soft dirt near a creek. Whoever had been here was gone now, but they'd left enough behind to tell a story. Cole dismounted and studied the prints. 2 people, maybe 3. Been here a few days at least. Drifters? Maybe. Or someone hired to cause trouble. He picked up one of the cans, beans, mostly empty. They left in a hurry. Fire's only a few hours cold. Think they're still nearby? Could be. Or they heard Rafferty making noise and decided to disappear. He stood, scanning the tree line. Either way, they were on my land shooting someone else's cattle. That's not random. You think Victor Hale hired them? I think someone did. Question is whether they're trying to frame me or just drive everyone out of this valley so they can buy it up cheap. A branch snapped somewhere in the trees. Both of them froze. Cole raised the shotgun slowly, his eyes tracking toward the sound. Show yourself, he called out. I know you're there. Silence. Then a man stepped out from behind a pine. Young, rail-thin, hands raised. Don't shoot. I'm not armed. Who are you? Name's Billy Croft. I'm just passing through, I swear. I didn't shoot nobody's cattle. But you were here, in this camp. For one night, yeah. But when I woke up this morning, there were 2 other men here. They had rifles and they were talking about cattle and money. I got scared and hid in the trees. They left maybe an hour ago, heading west. Cole studied him. You see their faces? One of them. Big guy. Scar on his cheek, missing 2 fingers on his left hand. Cole's expression darkened. Jack Reeves. Works for the Hales. I don't know about that. I just know I want no part of whatever they're doing. I'm heading east soon as you let me go. You're a witness. You need to tell the sheriff what you saw. No, sir. I'm not testifying against nobody. That's a good way to end up dead. And running's a good way to look guilty. Billy shook his head, already backing toward the trees. I'm sorry. I can't help you. Cole raised the shotgun. You're not leaving. You going to shoot an unarmed man? I'm going to hold you until the sheriff gets here. Whether that's comfortable or not is up to you. Billy looked at Lena, pleading. Miss, please. I didn't do nothing wrong. I just want to leave. Lena felt torn. The kid looked terrified, and dragging him into whatever this was seemed cruel. But Cole was right. If Jack Reeves was involved, if the Hales were behind this, they needed proof. I'm sorry, she said quietly. But you saw something important. That makes you valuable and dangerous to the wrong people. That's why I need to run. Running won't save you. They'll find you anyway. Cole gestured with the shotgun. Come on, back to the ranch. We'll send for the sheriff from there. Billy looked like he might bolt. His eyes darted between them, calculating odds. Then his shoulders sagged. I should have kept writing when I had the chance. Probably, Cole agreed, but you didn't. So now you're going to do the right thing instead. They rode back with Billy between them, silent and miserable. Lena kept watching the tree line, expecting Jack Reeves and whoever else to appear with guns blazing. But the land stayed empty, the sky stayed clear, and they made it back to the ranch without incident. Cole locked Billy in the tack room with a blanket and some food, while Lena drafted a message for the sheriff. She wrote it out carefully, facts only, no speculation, and Cole rode into town to deliver it personally. He was gone 4 hours. Lena spent them watching Billy through the tack room door, making sure he didn't try to escape, and fighting the growing certainty that they'd just painted targets on their backs. When Cole returned, he had news. Sheriff's coming tomorrow morning. Says he'll take Billy's statement and investigate the Hales if there's evidence. If? Sheriff Taylor's not stupid. He knows who has power in this territory, and it's not me. Cole pulled off his hat, ran a hand through his hair. But at least it's official now. Whatever happens next, we followed the law. And if the law doesn't help, then we handle it ourselves. That night, neither of them slept well. Lena lay in bed listening to Cole pace in his room, the floorboards creaking under his weight. Around midnight, she gave up and went downstairs to make coffee. He was already in the kitchen, sitting in the dark. Can't sleep either? She asked, lighting a lamp. Too many thoughts. She poured 2 cups and sat across from him. In the lamplight, she could see the exhaustion in his face, the lines that seemed deeper than they had a month ago. You're thinking about your wife. It wasn't a question. He looked at her surprised, then away. How'd you know? Because that's what people do when they're scared. They think about what they've already lost and whether they can survive losing more. You sound like you know from experience. I do. Cole wrapped his hands around his cup. She died because I wasn't here. I was in town, buying supplies. She got sick so fast. By the time I got back, she was already burning up with fever. I rode for the doctor, but he was gone. And by the time I found him, and we got back, he stopped, his voice breaking. She was already gone. I wasn't here. I couldn't help her. That's not your fault, isn't it? If I'd been here, maybe I would have noticed sooner. Maybe we could have done something. Or maybe she would have died anyway, and you would have watched it happen, helpless. Would that have been better? At least I would have been here. She wouldn't have died alone. Lena reached across the table, covered his hand with hers. Cole, you can't carry that forever. It'll kill you. Maybe I deserve it. And maybe you need to forgive yourself for being human, for not being able to save everyone. She squeezed his hand. You're not a bad man. You're just a man who loved someone and lost her. That's not a crime. He looked at their joined hands, his expression raw. I don't know how to do this. Do what? This. Feel things again. Let someone in. I thought, after she died, I thought I was done, that I'd just exist until I didn't anymore. And then you showed up, stubborn and impossible, and you wouldn't leave. And now I can't stop thinking about what happens if something happens and nothing's going to happen to me. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise I'm not going anywhere by choice. I'm here, Cole. I'm staying, no matter what comes. He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers. The gesture was tentative, uncertain, like someone learning a language they'd forgotten. I don't deserve you. Stop deciding what you deserve. Just accept what is. They sat like that for a long time, hands clasped across the table, the lamp burning low, the house silent around them. It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't a promise of forever. It was just two broken people choosing to be broken together and hoping that might be enough. The sheriff arrived at dawn with 2 deputies and an expression that said he'd rather be anywhere else. Sheriff Taylor was a solid man in his 50s, with gray in his beard and eyes that had seen too much. Mercer, Miss Whitaker, where's your witness? They brought Billy out. He looked even worse than the night before, pale and shaking, like a man who knew he'd made a terrible mistake. Taylor interviewed him for an hour, taking notes, asking questions. When he was done, he turned to Cole. The kid's story checks out. And if Jack Reeves was here, that ties back to the Hales. But that's not proof they ordered it. What would be proof? Cole demanded. Them signing a confession? Something more than a drifter's word against one of the biggest operations in the territory. Taylor sighed. Look, I'll question Reeves. I'll investigate. But unless I find hard evidence, my hands are tied. So they get away with it. I didn't say that. I said my hands are tied. Your hands... He looked meaningfully at Cole. Well, that's between you and your conscience. After they left, taking Billy with them, Cole stood in the yard staring at nothing. Lena approached carefully. What are you thinking? That the law's useless out here, that we're on our own. We knew that already. Yeah, but knowing it and accepting it are different things. He turned to her. If the Hales come after us, it won't be legal. It'll be fast and final. You understand that? I understand. And you're still staying. I told you, I'm not going anywhere. He studied her face like he was memorizing it. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most foolish. You've said that before. It's still true. That afternoon, Victor Hale arrived with his father. Edward Hale was everything his son aspired to be. Tall, commanding, with silver hair and clothes that probably cost more than Cole's entire ranch. He dismounted with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no and didn't plan to start now. Mr. Mercer, I believe we've had some misunderstandings. No misunderstanding. Your men were on my land, shooting cattle, trying to frame me. That's pretty clear. I assure you I have no idea what you're talking about. If someone was on your property, it wasn't at my direction. Your man Jack Reeves was identified by a witness. Jack's an independent contractor. What he does on his own time is his business. Convenient. Edward's smile was colder than his son's. Mr. Mercer, I came here today to make you an offer. A final offer. I'll pay you triple what your land is worth. You can take that money and start fresh somewhere else, somewhere easier. Or you can stay here and continue struggling against odds that are only going to get worse. I'm not selling. Even though staying puts Miss Whitaker in danger? The words hung in the air like a threat. Cole's hand moved toward his shotgun. You threatening her? I'm stating facts. This valley is changing. Small operations like yours can't compete anymore. And accidents happen out here. Fires, stampedes, people getting hurt doing dangerous work. It would be tragic if something happened to your lovely assistant. Lena stepped forward before Cole could react. Get off this land. Now. Edward looked at her with amusement. My son was right about you. You have spirit. But spirit doesn't stop bullets, Miss Whitaker. Neither does money, Mr. Hale. And if you or your men come near this ranch again, you'll find out just how dangerous I can be. Brave words. Try me. Edward studied them both, his expression calculating. Then he smiled, a real smile this time, full of teeth. You know what? I like you two. You've got grit. So I'm going to make one final offer, and this one's for her. He turned to Lena. Come work for me. I'll pay you 5 times what Mercer can afford. Give you a real house. introduce you to society. You could have a future, Miss Whitaker, a real one, not this hard-scrabble existence. I have a future. It's here. With a man who can barely feed himself? Who's one bad season away from losing everything? That's not a future. That's desperation. Maybe. But it's mine. And I choose it. Edward's smile faded. Then you're a fool, both of you. He mounted his horse. When this place falls apart, and it will, don't come begging to me for mercy. You won't find any. He rode off, Victor following behind with a look that promised revenge. When they were gone, Cole turned to Lena. Why did you do that? Do what? Turn him down. He was offering you everything, money, security, a real life. I have a real life. You have this. He gestured at the ranch, this broken-down place that's barely surviving. I have you. The words came out before she could stop them. They hung between them, naked and honest and terrifying. Cole stared at her. Lena, I know you didn't ask for this, for me. I know you're still in love with your wife, and maybe you always will be. But I'm here anyway, and I'm choosing this, choosing you, even if you never choose me back. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying I'd rather struggle here with you than have everything somewhere else without you. I'm saying you matter to me, and this place matters, and I'm willing to fight for both, even if I'm the only one fighting. Cole's face worked through a dozen emotions. Then he closed the distance between them in 2 strides and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and clumsy and tasted like coffee and fear. His hands tangled in her hair, and she grabbed his shirt, pulling him closer, kissing him back with everything she had. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. I can't promise you anything, he said roughly. I can't promise this will work, or that I won't break your heart, or that we'll survive what's coming. I don't need promises. I just need you to try. I don't know if I remember how. Then we'll figure it out together. He kissed her again, softer this time, like he was afraid she might break. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet. I'm terrified of losing you. Then don't. Hold on. Fight. Choose me back. I'm trying. I swear I'm trying. That's enough for now. They stood in the yard as the sun set, holding each other like drowning people holding driftwood. The ranch was still falling apart. The hails were still circling. Everything was still uncertain and dangerous and probably doomed. But for the first time in 3 years, Cole Mercer felt something other than grief. He felt alive. That night changed something fundamental between them. They didn't talk about the kiss or what it meant. They just moved through the evening differently, closer, more aware of each other, like 2 magnets that had finally stopped resisting their pull. Cole made dinner for the first time since she'd arrived. It was terrible, burned potatoes and undercooked beans, but Lena ate every bite and didn't complain. Afterward, they sat on the porch watching the sun disappear behind the mountains. Not touching, but close enough that she could feel the warmth of his arm next to hers. My wife's name was Catherine, he said suddenly. Catherine Rose Mercer. Everyone called her Kate. Lena stayed quiet, letting him talk. She was from Boston. Came west because her father thought the air would help her lungs. She was always fragile, always sick with something, but she was stubborn, refused to go back east even when things got hard. He paused. I loved her. I want you to know that. What I felt for her was real. I know. But she's been gone 3 years. And somewhere in those 3 years, I stopped living and started just existing. Waiting to die, maybe. I don't know. He looked at Lena. And then you showed up, and you wouldn't let me keep doing that. You forced me to see that I was still here, still breathing, still capable of feeling things I thought were dead. Cole, let me finish. I need to say this. He took a breath. I don't know if what I feel for you is the same as what I felt for her. It's different, rougher around the edges, less about poetry and more about survival. But it's real, and it terrifies me, because I know what it's like to lose someone now, and I don't know if I can survive it again. Lena turned to face him fully. You're not going to lose me. You can't know that. No, but I can fight like hell to make sure it doesn't happen. She reached for his hand. I'm not Catherine. I'm not fragile or delicate or going to break at the first sign of trouble. I'm here because I choose to be, and I'm staying because I'm too stubborn to leave. You want me gone? You're going to have to throw me out bodily, and even then I'll probably come back. That got a laugh out of him, small and rough, but real. You're crazy. Probably, but I'm your kind of crazy, apparently. He squeezed her hand. Yeah, you are. They sat like that until the stars came out, holding hands like teenagers, neither one wanting to be the first to let go. When the cold finally drove them inside, Cole walked her to the stairs and stopped. Good night, Lena. Good night. She was halfway up when he called out. Lena? Yeah? Thank you for choosing this. For choosing me. Thank you for letting me. She went to bed with her heart full and her mind racing. Nothing was solved. The Hales were still a threat, the ranch was still struggling, and they were still two broken people trying to figure out how to function together. But for the first time since Omaha, she felt like she belonged somewhere. The next morning brought trouble on horseback. Lena was collecting eggs from the henhouse. She'd found 3 half-wild chickens living in the rafters and had slowly coaxed them into actually laying when she heard shouting from the yard. She dropped the basket and ran. Tom Rafferty was back, this time with the sheriff and what looked like half the men from town. Cole stood in front of the barn with his shotgun, his face set in stone. I'm telling you, I didn't shoot your cattle. And I'm telling you that Jack Reeves swears he was nowhere near your property that day, Rafferty shot back. Says he was in town, and I got 3 witnesses who'll confirm it. 3 witnesses who work for the Hales, I'm guessing. Doesn't matter who they work for. Point is, your story doesn't hold up. Sheriff Taylor dismounted wearily. Cole, I talked to everyone involved. Reeves has an alibi. Billy Croft disappeared before I could get a formal statement. And without evidence, I can't... Can't what? Can't do your job? Can't arrest a man based on accusations. You know how this works. Yeah, I know exactly how it works. The Hales buy enough people and suddenly the law works for them instead of everyone else. Watch yourself, Taylor warned. I may not be able to arrest Reeves, but I can arrest you for slander if you keep talking like that. Cole's laugh was bitter. Of course you can. That's exactly the kind of law we got out here. Rafferty stepped forward. Here's what's going to happen, Mercer. You're going to pay me for those 3 head of cattle, fair market value plus damages. And you're going to apologize for wasting the sheriff's time with false accusations. I'm not paying for cattle I didn't kill. Then I'm filing a claim against your property. Court will decide who's right. And when they do, when they find in my favor, you'll lose a lot more than the price of 3 steers. Cole raised the shotgun slightly. Get off my land. That's a threat, one of Rafferty's men said, reaching for his gun. It's a warning. There's a difference. The situation balanced on a knife edge. Lena could see it in everyone's posture, the way hands hovered near weapons, the way horses shifted nervously, the way even the sheriff tensed like he expected shooting to start any second. She stepped into the open, her hands raised. Wait! Everyone turned to look at her. Mr. Rafferty, what if we made a deal? What if we paid you for the cattle, but you withdraw your claim and leave us alone? Lena, no, Cole started. It's my money too, she said firmly, not taking her eyes off Rafferty. We're partners in this ranch now. And as a partner, I'm saying we pay and move on. Rafferty studied her. You got that kind of money? We will. Give us 2 weeks to raise it, and you'll have your payment. 1 week. 2, that's our offer. Rafferty looked at his men, then back at Lena. Fine, 2 weeks. But if I don't see payment by then, I'm filing that claim and taking it all the way. Understood? Understood. After they left, Cole rounded on her. What the hell were you thinking? We don't have that kind of money. I know. Then why? Because buying time was better than getting shot in your own yard. Now we have 2 weeks to figure something out instead of being dead or in jail. Cole ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Figure what out? We're barely scraping by as it is. Where am I supposed to get money for 3 head of cattle? We sell something. Or we borrow. Or I'm not borrowing from anyone. That's how you end up owned by someone else. Then we sell something. Like what? The only thing worth money on this ranch is the land itself, and I'm not selling that. They stood in tense silence, both breathing hard. Finally, Cole's shoulders sagged. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have snapped at you. You were trying to help. I know you're scared. I am too. I'm not scared. He stopped, forced himself to be honest. Yeah, I'm scared, terrified. Because if we lose this place, we lose everything, and I don't know how to fix it. Lena thought hard, turning possibilities over in her mind. Then an idea struck her, risky, probably stupid, but possible. What about my skills? People know I can deliver babies now. Mrs. Patterson said they need someone with medical knowledge. You're not a doctor. No, but I know enough to help with births and basic injuries. If I started charging for my services, that's not enough, not in 2 weeks. Maybe not, but it's something. And if we combine it with selling the spring calves early, taking them to market now instead of waiting, they're undersized, won't get good prices. Some money is better than no money. Cole looked at her, really looked at her, and she saw him warring with himself. Pride versus practicality. The desire to handle everything himself versus the need to accept help. You're sure about this? About staying? About fighting for this place? Because once we start down this path, there's no going back. The Hales won't stop. Rafferty won't stop. It's going to get worse before it gets better. I'm sure. Even if we lose everything? Even then. Because we'll still have each other. He crossed to her and pulled her into a fierce hug, burying his face in her hair. She held him back just as tightly, feeling him shake with suppressed emotion. I don't deserve you, he murmured. Stop saying that. It's true. Then deserve me. Earn me every day by fighting alongside me instead of trying to protect me from everything. I don't need protection. I need a partner. He pulled back enough to look at her. A partner. Yes. Someone who trusts me to fight my own battles. Someone who lets me help carry the weight instead of trying to shoulder it all alone. I don't know how to do that. Then learn. We'll both learn. He kissed her then, hard and desperate, and she kissed him back with everything she had. When they broke apart, his eyes were wet but determined. All right, partners, we do this together. Together. They spent the next week working like people possessed. Cole rounded up the spring calves and prepared them for market, while Lena rode to every homestead within a day's travel, letting people know she was available for medical help. The response surprised her. Within 3 days, she'd delivered another baby. This one, thankfully not breech, set a broken arm for a farmer who'd been kicked by a mule and stitched up a boy who'd tangled with barbed wire. Each family paid what they could. Some offered cash, others gave goods: eggs, smoked meat, preserves, flour. One family gave her a milk cow that had just calved. It wasn't much individually, but it added up. Cole drove the calves to market in Bozeman, taking them himself rather than trusting a broker. He was gone 3 days. Lena spent those days working herself to exhaustion so she wouldn't have time to worry. She repaired more fence, cleaned the barn top to bottom, planted the rest of the garden, and treated 2 more patients who came seeking help. The second patient was a woman from town, Mrs. Ellis, a seamstress with a badly infected hand from a needle stick. The infection had spread up her arm, red streaks tracking toward her shoulder. Lena knew enough to be terrified. When did this start? She asked, carefully examining the swollen hand. 4 days ago. I thought it would get better on its own. It's not going to get better. It's going to kill you if we don't do something now. Mrs. Ellis went pale. What can you do? I need to lance it, drain the infection, clean it thoroughly. It's going to hurt, a lot. And even then, I can't promise it'll work. But if you don't, then the infection reaches your heart and you die, probably within a week. Mrs. Ellis swallowed hard. Do it. Lena worked for 2 hours, draining pus, cleaning the wound with alcohol that made Mrs. Ellis scream, packing it with honey and clean bandages. When she was done, both women were shaking. Change the dressing twice a day. Keep it clean. If the red streaks get worse or you get a fever, send for me immediately. How much do I owe you? Lena looked at the woman's worn dress, her calloused hands, the exhaustion in her eyes. You're a seamstress? Yes. I need a proper dress. Something that doesn't look like I've been working cattle in it. Can you do that? I can do better than that. I'll make you 2 dresses. Good ones. One's enough. 2, for saving my life. They shook on it, and Lena rode home feeling like maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. Cole returned on the 3rd day looking exhausted but cautiously optimistic. He'd gotten decent prices for the calves. Not great, but better than expected. Combined with what Lena had earned, they had enough. Just barely, with nothing left over, but enough. They counted it out on the kitchen table that night, stacking coins and bills in careful piles. "It's here," Lena said, almost not believing it. "We actually did it." Cole sat back, running both hands through his hair. "I can't believe that worked." "We worked. That's why it worked." He reached across the table and took her hand. "What you did this week, the healing, the helping, you saved us. We saved us together, like partners." "Yeah, like partners." They rode to Rafferty's ranch the next day to deliver the payment. Tom counted it twice, his expression sour, like he'd hoped they'd fail. "This squares us," Cole said. "We're done here." "For now," Rafferty replied. "But mark my words, Mercer, you won't make it through another winter. This land will break you eventually." "Maybe, but not today." On the ride home, Lena felt something loosen in her chest. They'd survived the first real test. Barely, and at great cost, but they'd survived. "We did it," she said. "We did. I'm proud of us." Cole reached over and squeezed her hand. "Me too." But their relief was short-lived. 2 days later, Victor Hale appeared at the ranch again, this time alone. He dismounted slowly, deliberately, and stood in the yard like he owned it. "Mr. Mercer, Miss Whitaker, I'm here with a final proposition." "We're not interested," Cole said. "You haven't heard it yet." "Don't need to. The answer's still no." Victor smiled that cold smile. "What if I told you that I could make all your problems disappear? Rafferty, the cattle, all of it. What if I offered you enough money to not just survive, but actually thrive? Enough to rebuild this place, hire help, live comfortably. In exchange for what? The land, all of it. And you leave Montana, both of you." Cole's hand moved toward his gun. "Get out." "Mr. Mercer, please. Hear me out. My father is offering you triple the market value. Enough money to start over anywhere you want. You could go back east, buy a nice house, live without breaking your back every day. Miss Whitaker could have the life she deserves instead of this hard-scrabble existence." "She has the life she deserves. Because she chose it." Victor turned to Lena. "Is that true? You really want this? Poverty and struggle and endless work with no guarantee you'll survive the year?" "I want Cole," Lena said simply. "Everything else is just details." "Romantic, but romance doesn't feed you when the crops fail. Romance doesn't keep you warm when winter comes and you can't afford firewood. Romance is worth more than your money," Lena interrupted. "You can't buy what we have, Victor. You can't purchase loyalty or trust or the willingness to fight for each other. So take your father's money and leave." Victor's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake, both of you. My father doesn't like being refused. He has ways of making people reconsider." "Is that a threat?" Cole stepped forward, his whole body tense. "It's a fact. People who stand in his way tend to have unfortunate accidents. Barns burn down, cattle get sick, wells dry up, and nobody can ever prove anything, but the pattern's clear enough if you're paying attention. Get off my land, now, before I make you." Victor mounted his horse, his movements deliberate. "You have 1 week to reconsider. After that, whatever happens is on your heads, both of you." He rode off at a canter, leaving a cloud of dust and dread in his wake. Cole stood rigid, his fists clenched, staring after Victor long after he'd disappeared. "He's going to come after us," Lena said quietly. "Really come after us." "I know. What do we do?" Cole was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to her, his expression grim but determined. "We prepare. We make sure the animals are secure. The buildings are as fireproof as we can make them. We take turns keeping watch at night, and we don't give them anything to use against us. Cole, if they're willing to kill us, then we make sure we're ready to defend ourselves. I'm not running, Lena. I've run from enough things in my life. I'm not running from this. I'm not asking you to run. I'm asking what happens if they come with guns. Then we shoot back, and we hope we're faster." That night, they barely slept. Cole kept watch from the porch, his rifle across his knees, while Lena lay in bed staring at the ceiling and trying not to imagine all the ways this could go wrong. Around 3 in the morning, she gave up and went downstairs. Cole was still on the porch, silhouetted against the stars. "You should be sleeping," he said without turning around. "So should you." "Can't. Too wired." She sat beside him, pulling a blanket around her shoulders. The night was cold and clear, the kind of night where you could see every star. "Tell me something true," she said. He looked at her. "What?" "Something true, something real. I need to hear something good right now." Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he set the rifle aside and turned to face her. "The truth is, before you came here, I was already dead. I was just waiting for my body to catch up with my mind. I'd given up on everything, the ranch, the future, myself. I was going through motions, killing time until time killed me back. Cole, let me finish. The truth is, you saved my life. Not by fixing the ranch or cooking meals or any of the practical things, though those mattered. You saved my life by refusing to let me stay dead. By showing up every day and choosing to be here, choosing to fight, choosing me even when I couldn't choose myself." His voice cracked. "I love you. That's the truth. I love you more than I knew it was possible to love someone. And if the hails come for us, if we lose everything, at least I'll have had this. I'll have had you. And that's worth more than any amount of land or money or safety." Lena was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "I love you too, so much it scares me." "Good. We can be scared together." She laughed through her tears and kissed him, tasting salt and desperation and hope, all mixed together. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. "Whatever comes, we face it together." "Together," he agreed. The week passed in a haze of preparation and tension. They fireproofed what they could, moved the most valuable animals closer to the house, took turns sleeping and keeping watch. Cole taught Lena how to shoot properly, not just how to hold a gun, but how to aim, how to breathe, how to not flinch when she pulled the trigger. "You're not bad," he said after she'd hit the target 3 times in a row. "Natural talent, maybe. Or desperation. That's a good motivator, too." On the 5th day, Mrs. Ellis arrived with 2 dresses wrapped in brown paper. They were beautiful, simple, but well made, with fabric that didn't look like it had been through a war. "These are too nice," Lena protested. "They're exactly right. You saved my life, Miss Whitaker. 2 dresses is nothing compared to that." After she left, Lena tried one on. It fit perfectly, and when Cole saw her in it, his expression went soft. "You look beautiful." "I look like someone who has a proper dress instead of work rags." "You look like my wife." The word hung in the air between them. Wife. They'd been dancing around it for weeks. This thing between them that felt like more than partnership but less than whatever came next. "Is that what you want?" Lena asked quietly. "For me to be your wife?" "More than anything, but I don't know if it's fair to ask. Not with everything that's happening, not when I can't promise you safety or stability or—" "Stop. Just stop." She crossed to him and took his hands. "I don't need promises of safety. I need you, just you. So if you're asking, the answer is yes. 1,000 times yes. I don't have a ring. I don't have anything to offer except yourself, and that's enough. That's everything." He kissed her then, fierce and desperate, and she kissed him back with equal intensity. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "We should do it soon before whatever happens, happens." "Yeah. Tomorrow then. We'll go to town, find the preacher, and do it. That simple? Why complicate it?" But nothing was ever simple. That night they were woken by the sound of horses, multiple horses, moving fast. Cole grabbed his rifle and was out the door before Lena could even get her boots on. She followed, her own rifle in hand, her heart hammering. 6 riders surrounded the house, their faces covered with bandanas. One of them, tall, broad-shouldered, urged his horse forward. "Cole Mercer, you've had your week. Time to make a choice." "I already made my choice. Now get off my land." "Can't do that. Mr. Hale sent us to deliver a message. See, when he makes an offer, he expects it to be accepted. And when it's not—" The man gestured, and one of the other riders threw a torch toward the barn. Cole fired without hesitation. The shot went wide, intentionally, Lena realized. But it was close enough to make the horses dance nervously. "Next one doesn't miss," Cole said, his voice deadly calm. "Leave now or find out." You're one man with one gun facing 6 of us. You really want to play those odds? I'm one man with nothing left to lose. That makes me a lot more dangerous than 6 men with paychecks. Lena stepped out of the shadows, her rifle raised. 2 guns, and I grew up hunting. At this range, I won't miss. The lead rider laughed. A woman? That's your backup? A woman who just put a rifle sight on your chest, Lena said coldly. Want to test whether I can pull the trigger? The tension stretched taut. Lena could see calculations happening behind the rider's eyes. 6 against 2 weren't great odds, but in the dark with shots already fired, people would get hurt. The question was whether they were willing to risk it. The torch had landed in the dirt, still burning. The lead rider looked at it, then at Cole and Lena, then made a decision. This isn't over. Mr. Hale's patience has limits. So does mine. Tell him next time he sends people to my ranch in the middle of the night, they better be ready for a fight. The riders wheeled their horses and disappeared into the darkness. Cole and Lena stood frozen, rifles raised, until the sound of hoofbeats faded completely. Then Lena's legs gave out. She sat down hard in the dirt, shaking so badly she couldn't stand. Cole was beside her immediately, pulling her against his chest, his own hands trembling. You did good. You were so brave. I thought I was going to die. Me too. But we didn't. We stood our ground and they backed down. They'll come back. I know, but tonight we won. That's something. He helped her inside and they spent the rest of the night sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee, jumping at every sound. When dawn finally broke, they were exhausted but alive. We need help, Lena said. We can't do this alone. Who's going to help us? Everyone's too scared of the Hales. What about the families I've helped? The people whose babies I delivered, whose bones I set? They owe us. Cole looked doubtful. Owing and helping are different things. Then let's find out. They spent the morning riding to neighboring homesteads, telling their story, asking for help. The responses were mixed. Some people turned them away immediately, too afraid to get involved. Others listened but offered nothing concrete. A few, like the Hendersons and Old Man Garrett, promised to stand with them if it came to violence. That's 5 families, Lena said as they rode home. Maybe 15 men total if everyone brings their sons. Against the Hales, that's not enough. It's more than we had yesterday. That afternoon, Sheriff Taylor rode up looking troubled. He dismounted slowly, like a man with bad news. Cole, Miss Whitaker, I heard about last night. You here to do something about it? Cole asked. I'm here to tell you that officially nothing happened. Nobody can prove those men were sent by the Hales, and without proof, right, without proof your hands are tied. I've heard this song before. Don't be like that. I'm trying to help. By telling us we're on our own, that's not help. Taylor sighed. Look, off the record, I think the Hales are guilty as sin. But I can't arrest them without evidence. And even if I could, they've got lawyers and money and connections. They'd be out before the ink dried on the arrest warrant. So what are we supposed to do? Just wait for them to burn us out? No. You're supposed to be smart. Document everything. Keep records. Get witnesses if you can. Build a case that even their lawyers can't weasel out of. And in the meantime? In the meantime, you defend yourselves. And if it comes to shooting, you make damn sure you're on the right side of the law when you do it. After he left, Cole turned to Lena. He's useless. He's doing what he can within a broken system. That's not enough. No. But it's what we've got. That night, Cole did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He went into his wife's room, the one Lena had found and left untouched, and started packing things away. Lena heard him moving around up there, heard the creak of floorboards, and the sound of boxes being filled. She didn't go up to help. This was something he needed to do alone. When he came down an hour later, his eyes were red, but his shoulders were straighter. I put her things in the attic, he said quietly. I'm not forgetting her, but I'm not living in a shrine anymore either. That must have been hard. It was, but it was necessary. He crossed to her. I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear all of it before you respond. Lena's heart stuttered, but she nodded. When you first arrived, I wanted you gone. Not because of anything you did, but because you represented change. Life continuing, the possibility of feeling things again. And I was terrified of all of that. He took her hands. But you wouldn't leave. You just kept showing up, kept working, kept choosing to be here, even when I gave you every reason to go. And somewhere in all that stubborn persistence, I fell in love with you." Lena's breath caught. "I'm not good at this," Cole continued. "I'm broken and difficult and probably not capable of being the man you deserve. But I love you. And if you'll have me, if you're willing to take on a man who's still figuring out how to live again, I want to marry you. For real this time. Not because of gossip or protection or convenience, but because I choose you. Because I want to build a life with you. Because I can't imagine doing any of this without you." Tears were streaming down Lena's face now. "You're asking me to marry you. I'm asking you to take a chance on a broken man and a failing ranch and a future that's anything but certain. I know it's not much. It's everything," Lena said. "You're everything. And yes, 1,000 times yes." He kissed her then, and she kissed him back, both of them crying and laughing at the same time. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I don't have a ring. I don't need one. I don't have anything to offer you except hard work and uncertainty. That's enough. You're enough." They were married 3 days later by the same traveling preacher who'd officiated at the Hendersons' baby's christening. It wasn't fancy, just them, the preacher, Mrs. Henderson as witness, and a handful of neighbors who'd braved potential hail retribution to attend. Lena wore one of her new dresses. Cole wore clean clothes and looked terrified and hopeful in equal measure. The ceremony took maybe 15 minutes. When it was over, they were husband and wife, bound together by words and choice and the fragile hope that maybe this time things would work out. The town threw them a small celebration afterward. Nothing elaborate, just neighbors gathering with food and drink, wishing them well. Even Tom Rafferty showed up, looking uncomfortable but genuine. "I was hard on you," he said to Cole. "Harder than I should have been. I hope you two make it." "Oh, that's as close to a blessing as we'll get from you, I guess. It's all I got to give." They shook hands, and Rafferty left quickly, like he was afraid of being seen as soft. That night, Lena moved her things into Cole's room. She'd expected it to be awkward, two people who'd been dancing around each other suddenly sharing a bed. But it wasn't. It was natural, like finally arriving somewhere you'd been traveling toward your whole life. They lay tangled together in the dark, and Cole told her stories about his childhood, about growing up in Ohio and dreaming of heading west. She told him about Omaha, about the boarding house and the owner's son, whose nose she'd broken. "You broke his nose?" Cole sounded impressed and concerned. "With a cast-iron skillet. He cornered me in the kitchen and said I should be grateful for his attention. I showed him how grateful I was. Remind me never to make you angry in the kitchen." She laughed and curled closer. "You're safe. Mostly." That's reassuring. They fell asleep like that, holding each other, and for the first time in years, neither of them had nightmares. But peace never lasted long. 2 weeks after the wedding, the attacks began in earnest. Someone poisoned their well. Cole caught it before they drank any, but they had to dig a new one. Fences were cut in the night, letting cattle wander. Someone shot at Cole while he was working the north section, missing by inches. They reported everything to Sheriff Taylor, who documented it all but could do nothing without proof of who was responsible. "I'm building a case," he said, "but these things take time." "We don't have time," Cole replied. "They're escalating." "I know, just be careful. And if you have to defend yourselves, make sure you can prove it was self-defense." The breaking point came on a hot July night. Lena woke to the smell of smoke. She was on her feet and shaking Cole awake before she was fully conscious. "Fire! The barn's on fire!" They ran outside to find the barn fully engulfed, flames reaching toward the sky. The animals were screaming, horses, the milk cow, chickens. Everything was chaos and heat, and the terrible certainty that they were losing it all. Cole ran toward the barn. Lena grabbed his arm. "You can't go in there." "The animals are already dead or will be. You go in there, you die too." He tried to pull free, but she held on with desperate strength. "Cole, please, I can't lose you. Not like this." Something in her voice broke through his panic. He stopped fighting, and they stood together watching everything burn. The barn, the hay they'd stored for winter, the tack and tools and equipment they couldn't afford to replace. When the Hail Riders appeared out of the darkness, both Cole and Lena were ready. They'd known this was coming, known the fire was just the opening move. Victor Hale rode at the head of the group, not bothering to hide his face this time. "Shame about your barn," he called out. "These old buildings, they go up so fast. Lucky you weren't inside." Cole raised his rifle. "You did this." "Did I? Can you prove it?" "I don't need proof. I know." "Knowing and proving are different things, Mr. Mercer. But here's what I know. You can't survive here anymore. You've got no barn, no winter feed, no way to protect your stock. My father's offer still stands. Sell us the land, take the money, and leave. Or stay and watch everything you've built turn to ash. Get off my property. This is your last chance. Take the money or lose everything." "I said get off my property." Victor's smile was cold. "Have it your way." But before he could turn his horse, gunshots rang out from the darkness. Not from Cole or Lena, but from the tree line. The Hale riders scattered, several of them crying out in pain. From the shadows emerged the Hendersons, Old Man Garrett, the Ellis family, and half a dozen other neighbors, all armed, all angry. "You heard the man," Mr. Henderson said, his rifle trained on Victor. "Get off his property." Victor's face went white. "You're all making a mistake. My father will—" "Your father's been terrorizing this valley for years," Mrs. Ellis interrupted. "We're done being scared. You leave now, or we start shooting for real. And at this range, we won't miss." For a long moment, Victor looked like he might actually fight. Then self-preservation won out. He wheeled his horse and fled, his remaining men following. When they were gone, Cole turned to find a dozen armed neighbors standing in his yard. "Why?" he asked simply. "Because you stood up to them," Henderson said. "Someone had to. Might as well be us. They'll come after you now. All of you. Let them try. There's more of us than there are of them. And we're done running." Old Man Garrett spat in the dirt. "Besides, that girl of yours delivered my grandson, saved my daughter-in-law's life. I ain't about to let some rich bastard run her off for doing good work." The other neighbors murmured agreement. Mrs. Ellis stepped forward. "You helped us. Now we help you. That's how it should work." Lena was crying now, overwhelmed by the unexpected support. "Thank you, all of you." "Don't thank us yet," Henderson said. "This ain't over. They'll regroup, come back harder. We need to be ready." They spent the rest of the night planning. By dawn, they had a strategy: rotating guards, signal fires for emergencies, a commitment to stand together against any future attacks. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. When everyone finally left, Cole and Lena stood in the ruins of their barn, watching the sunrise. "We lost everything," Cole said quietly. "Not everything. We still have the land, the house, each other, the animals that survived. It's going to take years to rebuild." "Then we'll take years. We're not going anywhere." He pulled her close. "I'm sorry. This is my fault. If I just sold when they first asked, then they would have won. And some other family would be standing here right now, facing the same thing. At least we're fighting back. Are we winning? I don't know, but we're not losing. That counts for something." The next week was a blur of activity. Neighbors helped them build a temporary shelter for the animals. Someone donated lumber. Others brought food. The community that had been paralyzed by fear was galvanized by anger. Sheriff Taylor showed up 5 days after the fire with news. "I arrested Jack Reeves, caught him bragging about the barn in a saloon. He's agreed to testify against the Hales in exchange for a reduced sentence." Cole's eyes widened. "He's turning on them? Scared of going to prison, scared of what'll happen to him if word gets out he was burning down barns for hire. He's willing to tell everything he knows. Is it enough? To arrest Edward Hale? Maybe. To convict him. That depends on the judge, the jury, and how good his lawyers are. But it's a start." The trial took place 6 weeks later in the territorial capital. Cole and Lena traveled there to testify, along with a dozen other neighbors who'd been victims of Hale intimidation over the years. Jack Reeves took the stand and laid out everything: the cattle killings, the poisoned wells, the barn burning, all of it ordered by Edward Hale. The Hale lawyers fought hard, but there were too many witnesses, too much evidence. When the verdict came down, guilty on multiple counts, the courtroom erupted in cheers. Edward Hale was sentenced to 15 years in prison. His ranch would be sold to pay restitution to his victims. Victor Hale had already fled the territory and wasn't expected to return. On the ride home, Cole and Lena barely spoke. They were exhausted, emotionally drained, but also lighter somehow. Like a weight they'd been carrying had finally lifted. "It's over," Lena said as the ranch came into view. "Yeah, it is. What do we do now?" Cole thought about that. "We rebuild. We live. We make this place into something worth all the fighting." "That sounds good." They spent the rest of the summer rebuilding. With the restitution money from the Hale estate, they could afford to do it right. A new barn, bigger than before. New equipment. More cattle. The garden flourished under Lena's care, producing enough vegetables to eat, preserve, and sell. Word of Lena's healing skills spread even further. She delivered more babies, treated more injuries, became the unofficial medical provider for a 50-mile radius. People paid her in cash and goods, and the money added up. In September, Tom Rafferty stopped by with surprising news. "I'm selling out," he said, "moving back east. My wife's had enough of this place, and honestly, so have I." "The Hales were trying to buy you out," Cole said. "They were, but I wanted to give you first crack at it. That north section that borders yours, good grazing land, water rights. Yours if you want it." Cole and Lena exchanged glances. They had the money now. Between the restitution and Lena's earnings, they could afford it. "What's the price?" Cole asked. Rafferty named a figure. "Fair, maybe even generous." "We'll take it," Lena said. They shook on it, and just like that, their ranch doubled in size. "You two are going to make it," Rafferty said. "I doubted it at first, but I was wrong. You've got something special here." After he left, Cole spread a map of their property on the kitchen table. With Rafferty's section, they had room to expand properly. "We're land rich now," he said. "Not wealthy, but we've got room to grow." "To build that future we keep talking about," Lena added. "Yeah, that one." She was quiet for a moment, then took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "We're going to need that room. For the future we're building." It took Cole a moment to understand. When he did, his eyes went wide. "You're pregnant. About 3 months along, I think." The emotions that crossed his face were almost too fast to name. Fear, joy, terror, wonder. Is it? "I'm healthy. The baby's healthy as far as I can tell. I wanted to be sure before I told you." He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. When he spoke, his voice was rough with tears. "I'm terrified." "Me too." "Well, what if something happens? What if I lose you like I lost Kate?" "You won't. I'm not Kate. I'm strong and healthy and stubborn as hell. This baby's going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. We're all going to be fine." "You can't promise that." "No, but I can believe it, and I need you to believe it too." He pulled back to look at her, his eyes wet. "A baby. A baby. Our baby." "Yes." He kissed her then, gentle and reverent, his hand moving to her stomach like he could feel the life growing there. "I love you," he said against her lips. "I love you too." That fall was the best they'd known. The harvest was good, the cattle were healthy, and Lena glowed with pregnancy. Cole became obsessively protective, constantly worrying about her lifting things or riding horses or doing any of the 100 tasks she'd been doing for months. "I'm pregnant, not dying," she told him after he'd tried to stop her from carrying a basket of laundry. "I know, but I can't help it. I'm terrified something's going to happen." "Then help me by trusting me. I know my limits. If I need help, I'll ask for it." It was hard for him, but he tried. And gradually, as the months passed and Lena stayed healthy and strong, his fear began to ease. Winter came, and this time they were ready. The house was warm, the pantries were full, and they had firewood stacked high. They spent long evenings by the fire, Cole reading aloud while Lena knitted tiny clothes for the baby they couldn't quite believe was real. The baby came in March, during a snowstorm that trapped them in the house for 3 days. Mrs. Henderson had come to stay a week before, preparing for the birth. When Lena's labor started, she was ready. The labor was long, almost 20 hours, but Lena was strong, and Mrs. Henderson knew what she was doing. When the baby finally arrived crying and perfect, Cole was there to receive him. "A son," Mrs. Henderson said, handing the baby to Cole. "Healthy and loud." Cole held his son like he was made of glass, tears streaming down his face. He's perfect. He looks like you, Lena said weakly from the bed. He has your stubbornness. I can already tell. They named him James after Cole's father, James Mercer, heir to a ranch that had almost died and been brought back to life by two stubborn people who refused to give up. The first weeks were exhausting. James cried constantly, slept rarely, and demanded every ounce of energy they had. But there was joy in it too. Joy in watching him discover the world. Joy in the way Cole looked at his son, like he couldn't quite believe something so perfect could be his. In April, when the snow finally melted and spring arrived properly, they took James outside for the first time. He squinted in the sunlight, made faces at the wind, and generally disapproved of everything that wasn't his mother's arms. He's going to be difficult, Lena said, laughing. He comes by it honestly, Cole replied. They stood in the yard, their son between them, looking out at the land they'd fought for. The new barn stood solid and strong. The garden was already showing green shoots. Cattle grazed in the distance. Everything they'd almost lost was here, real and growing. We did it, Lena said quietly. We did. I'm proud of us. Me too. That summer brought more changes. More families moved into the valley, no longer afraid of hail intimidation. The community grew stronger, more connected. A school was started in town. A real doctor arrived, though he often sent complicated cases to Lena for consultation. In June, a letter arrived from the territorial government. The Hale estate had been fully liquidated, and additional restitution funds were available for victims. Cole and Lena's share was substantial, enough to hire permanent help, to buy more livestock, to truly expand. We could hire a foreman, Cole said, studying the letter. Someone to handle the day-to-day operations while I focus on breeding and improving the herd. Or we could save it, Lena suggested. Build a fund for James, for his education, his future. Why not both? Use half to grow the ranch, save half for him. Always the pragmatist. I learned from the best. They hired a foreman, a quiet man named Dutch, who'd worked cattle his whole life and didn't ask unnecessary questions. With Dutch handling the daily operations, Cole had time to focus on improving their livestock, on breeding better cattle that could survive the harsh winters. Lena continued her healing work, though she was more selective now that she had James to care for. She took on only the most serious cases, difficult births, major injuries, illnesses that the doctor couldn't handle. Her reputation grew until people were traveling from 2 days away to seek her help. In September, they hosted another harvest dinner, bigger than the first. 30 families attended, bringing food and music and children who ran wild through the yard. James was passed from person to person, cooed over and spoiled by women who remembered when Lena had helped them. Late in the evening, when most people had left and the stars were out, Cole found Lena sitting on the porch steps with James sleeping in her arms. Tired? He asked, settling beside her. Exhausted. Happy. Me too. He looked at his son, then at his wife, then out at the land they'd saved. You know what I realized today? What? I haven't thought about Catherine in months. Not in a bad way. I haven't forgotten her. But she's not the first thing I think about anymore when I wake up. You are. James is. This life we're building. Is that hard for you? No, it's freeing, I guess. Like I've finally let myself move forward instead of staying stuck in the past. He took her hand. You did that. You gave me permission to live again. You gave yourself permission. I just refused to let you give up. Same thing. Not really, but I'll take the credit if you're offering. He laughed and kissed her forehead. I love you. I love you too. They sat like that as the night deepened, holding each other and their son, watching the stars wheel overhead. In the distance, a coyote howled. The garden rustled in the breeze. The house behind them stood solid and warm. Years passed. James grew into a curious, stubborn boy who wanted to know how everything worked. 2 daughters followed, Mary, serious and thoughtful, and Ruth, wild as the wind. The ranch prospered. Dutch proved to be excellent at his job, allowing Cole to focus on breeding a strain of cattle that could handle Montana winters better than anything else in the territory. Lena became famous in her own right. People called her the Angel of the Valley, though she hated the nickname. She trained 2 younger women in healing arts, passing on what she knew, building something that would outlast her. Tom Rafferty wrote occasionally from Philadelphia, telling them about city life, asking about the ranch. He sounded happy, or as happy as a man who'd left half his life behind could sound. The Hales were never heard from again. Edward died in prison. Victor was rumored to be somewhere in California, though nobody cared enough to verify. The valley itself changed. More families arrived. A proper town grew up around the general store, with a bank, a hotel, eventually a railroad depot. The territory became a state. Progress marched forward, whether people were ready for it or not. But the Mercer Ranch remained a constant, a place where hard work and stubbornness and love had built something that lasted. On their 10th anniversary, Cole took Lena back to the spot where they'd first kissed. The yard looked different now, cleaner, more prosperous, with 3 children's toys scattered everywhere. But the mountains were the same, the sky was the same, the sense of possibility was the same. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Staying here? Choosing this life?" "Not once," she said without hesitation. "Do you?" "Not for a second. You saved my life, Lena. In every way a person can be saved. We saved each other, that's how it works. Is it?" "For us it is." He kissed her then, and she kissed him back. And it felt exactly like that first kiss, desperate and hopeful and absolutely right. Behind them, the house stood warm and full of life. Their children played in the yard. The land they'd fought for stretched out in all directions, no longer dying but thriving. And 2 people who'd been broken had found wholeness in each other. Not because they were perfect, but because they were perfectly willing to fight for what mattered. Years later, when Cole was old and gray and still working the ranch despite his children's protests, someone asked him what the secret was. To surviving Montana. To building something that lasted. To finding happiness in a place that tried to break you. He thought about it for a long time. Then he said, "Find someone who refuses to let you give up. Someone who sees your broken pieces and doesn't run. Someone who chooses you every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. And then choose them back. Every single day. That's the secret. Everything else is just details." The questioner wrote it down, thanked him, and left. Cole went back to work, his wife beside him like always, their hands worn but still clasped together, still choosing each other, still believing tomorrow might be better than today, still alive.